The March 2024 Cabinet meeting of the London Borough and Hammersmith and Fulham. This is a meeting laid down by statute and confirmed by Council Constitution, and it is undertaken as part of the democratic process, which is our British system. If there is a fire alarm, can I ask that you leave and follow the officers' directions out of this door and assemble swiftly outside, where your name will be taken and safety checks will be carried out. I would like to begin by introducing my team, which are the elected members of the Cabinet, starting with to my left and working out to Councillor Ree, and starting out on my right then, working out to Councillor Harcourt. So, Councillor Coleman.
Ben Coleman, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care.
Hello, Councillor Francis Ume, Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness.
Hello, Councillor Andrew Jones, Cabinet Member for the Economy.
Good evening, Councillor Bora Kwan, Cabinet Member for Civic Renewal.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Councillor Rowan Ree, Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform.
Thank you.
Good evening, Councillor Rebecca Harvey, Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion and Community Safety.
Very much. Councillor Alex Anderson, I'm the Cabinet Member for Children and Education.
Councillor Sharon Holder, Cabinet Member for Public Realm.
Councillor Wesley Harcourt, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Ecology.
Okay, and then following that, we have the Chief Executive here, Councillor Sharon Lee. Sorry, not Councillor Sharon Lee, Sharon Lee, and Grant Degg, who's the Assistant Director of Legal Services and also the Borough's Monitoring Officer. This is a meeting of the Cabinet. These are the rules that we inherited in 2014 and have been in place in the London, Hammersmith and Fulham for a long time. We also invite the opposition to come and ask questions, and we have 4 members of the opposition in the form of the Leader of the Opposition, Victoria Bottlebrank-Fowler, Councillor Adroni Alford, Councillor Jose Alfonso, and Councillor Aliyah Afazel Khan. So they are also here, but not members of the Cabinet, although I will allow them to ask questions which is the Chair's discretion. So that is the process. We will begin and work through the process. I am going to have to, I must apologise to members of the public who've come, take some education papers first. We have an Ofsted inspection and we're very keen to let the officers focus on that. So we will whip through those relevant papers before we then come to some of the delegations. But to start off with, can I ask the minutes of the last meeting, are those noted? And are they agreed? Yep. Thank you. Are there any apologies for absence? No, I know Councillor Sanderson will have to leave, so I want that to be noted in order to undergo the preparation I mentioned. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, any legal declarations of interest from any councillors present? That's recorded as none. In which case, I will move very quickly then to item number 4 and ask Councillor Sanderson to introduce it.
Thank you very much, Leader. So our schools are having to do ever more with ever less, given significant real-term spending cuts since 2010 in schools funding. This report is seeking approval from the Cabinet for the 24-25 early years block of the dedicated schools grant, covering the existing childcare entitlements in addition to the new entitlements for working parents of 2-year-olds and under 2-year-olds for the 24-25 financial year.
Okay. Are there any questions on that paper? Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Is your microphone on?
Yeah, can I?
Okay, we'll try again. What services comprise the historic commitments through Central School Services, and how will they be impacted by the CSSB allocation for 2024-25? Question number 2 is, how will the high needs block expenditure be spent to directly benefit the young people and children with special educational needs? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. On those, if you mind, I might send you a written response because high needs is slightly different to this. And it's actually quite a long response. Suffice to say on these, we have got sufficiency. We're very happy with the capability. There is a shortfall in funding from the government, but we are confident around sufficiency of the offer. But I will ask officers to come back to you with a longer response. But if you don't mind, after we're out of the Ofsted window, which is next week, because no one has any headspace, including me.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Okay, I would just say, as a matter of assurance, as we discussed on Wednesday at the full council's annual budget meeting, councils are cutting services all over the country, particularly children's services. This council stands out as one of the few that have invested more. And you may have seen the extremely positive video that my colleague, Councillor Sanderson, appeared in earlier this week, where she was opening new family centres, which replaced the short start centres that were closed down by the Conservative Liberal Democrat government in the very early days of the last decade. But we are refunding and reinvesting to put even more of those facilities to help extremely vulnerable children get and their families get a best start. So that, along with other special educational needs, funding has gone up. Almost every year we've been in office, and it will continue to be a priority for us. And I can assure you that I would happily take any further questions either at the next cabinet meeting or indeed in response to the written document Councillor Sanderson will send you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that.
Thank you. Right. In that case, sorry, did you want to come back?
No, that's fine.
Yeah. In that case, can I ask, is that item agreed?
Yeah. Agreed.
Right. In which case, I move on to item number 5 and back to Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much. The next two papers are linked. So in Hammersmith and Fulham, we are incredibly proud of our offer for our young people in care, our care leavers and our care experienced young people. And to affirm that commitment on a public scale, we are becoming a partner of the National Care Leaver Covenant, subject to agreement from the committee, which is a DfE-led national campaign aimed to support care leavers aged 16 to 25 become healthy, thriving adults.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the Cabinet? Any questions from the opposition? No? In which case, is that item agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah, good, excellent work. And on to item number 6 then. Would you like to add anything else, Councillor Sanderson?
Much the same. It's signing up to specific housing commitments. We have gone over and above again in Hammersmith and Fulham. We have really been at the forefront of pushing this agenda across London, because alongside my housing colleague, we have got an excellent offer for our care leavers and care experienced young people in Hammersmith and Fulham. And that's what we've led with, and that's what's in the paper. Great.
They are very good papers. I would like to put it onto record that my former colleague, my now sadly departed colleague, Councillor Michael Cartwright, was a magistrate, and he once reported to me after a year of being a magistrate that he was shocked at the number of ex-care leavers who came before him for crime. And it precipitated, while we were in opposition, a very long study of what it was like to be a care leaver and face society, often without the benefits many of us have taken for granted, with good and loving and parents who would invest in us. The fact that you've led on this so thoroughly, I think I see always in his memory, because we are making significant changes. It's not in this paper, I don't think, but we've taken all care leavers out of council tax. We priority care leavers for housing, and we offer an amazing amount of support to care leavers. Most of all, we listen to care leavers who advise us on what's needed, which is why we declared being a care leaver a protected characteristic. So this is just the start of what I think will be a national conversation. I'm glad it's starting here in Hammersmith and Fulham as one of the places, and I think this is a very important paper. Okay, is that item agreed? Yep, everyone in the Cabinet? Thank you very much. And that takes us to the end of those papers. I will release you to go and carry on your fine work. And I would thank, if Jackie Shannon, if she's here, I would release her too, and say thank you very much for your work on these papers to the relevant strategic director. Right, we now have the, South Fulham West Clean neighbourhood. I presume that's what brought so many people here. And I would begin by asking Councillor Holder to give a short introduction. I would say, you know, we live in extremely challenging times. I think democracy is often underrated, but this is part of a democratic process. I would ask everybody, no matter what your views, to behave in the way that you would in a democratic process, and to speak with politeness to people who disagree with you. I promise you your concerns will be listened. When we take the delegation, each person will get strictly 5 minutes to make their points. At the end of that, the Cabinet will want to ask questions about why your points have come about and what they are. And indeed, I would be grateful if you would answer those as openly as you could. And at the end of that, we will then ask an officer to explain to us some of the concerns that might have been raised. I'm also going to take questions from any members of the opposition, but again, I take those at my discretion, and I will be mindful that this will be a very long evening, but I'm determined we get through it and hear all sorts of different points of view. So on that note, can I hand over to you, Councillor Holder, to introduce this paper, please?
Thank you very much. As the report cites, the South Fulham West Clean Air Neighbourhood Trial was developed by residents supported by engineers from Hammersmith and Fulham Council, promoting healthy living by protecting children and families from toxic air, which can lead to dementia, cancer, heart disease, asthma, lung problems, and early death. The trial set out an end to a decade-old congestion and pollution problems in the streets to the west of Wandsworth Bridge Road. Smart number plate technology has been used to discourage out-of-borough motorists not stopping, shopping, or visiting friends and families from using residential streets as cut-throughs, exacerbated by the use of sat-nav equipment by motorists. The data shows that the trial to the west of Wandsworth Bridge Road, which began in December 2022, has seen a reduction of over 7,000 vehicles a day using the side streets. Residents who live anywhere in the borough can still drive through the Clean Air Neighbourhood cameras, and visitors from outside the borough can be given permission by residents to access through those cameras. However, motorists from outside Hammersmith and Fulham not stopping to shop or visit friends are still able to use the main roads. This report sets out extensive consideration during the trial to monitor air quality, support businesses, consult with residents, analyse traffic, and reconsider alternative solutions. Following the most extensive consultation and engagement exercise for a traffic project in the council's history, this report recommends making a new permanent traffic management order based on the responses that have been received, excuse me, and that have been received, a new experimental traffic management order for Settrington Road and Cloncharty Road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Following that, I will now invite people to come forward to give a delegation. I would ask that you attend swiftly. We have a very busy evening, and that once your name is called, that you arrive quickly. If you miss your spot, you will miss your spot, and I will not call you again. So I'm going to begin by calling a Mr. David Tosh. Would you please take the seat? I will give you 5 minutes in a second, Mr. Tosh. Right, go.
Thank you, Stephen. Cabinet members, why are we all here? I can tell you why I am here. I'm here because the CAN traffic scheme, with its potential to generate huge income by fining non-resident motorists, has divided the local community, damaged local businesses, harmed people's livelihoods and their lives, and it raises serious ethical concerns. Before I get into the detail, I ask you to consider not just the data, but the cries of many individual residents who are suffering. The fact that you have 7 deputations opposing the scheme tonight and that a large crowd turned out on short notice on the Monday morning Wandsworth Bridge was closed to protest against the can should tell you that it has very serious problems. The scheme may be clever, may be well-intentioned, but it has backfired. Streets that should be free for everyone to use are policed by cameras. It has sown discord, splitting residents into winners and into losers, into insiders and outsiders, NIMBYs and victims. Council officials who should be the servants of residents doing things with them are instead seen as untrustworthy, doing things to them. Over 12,000 people feel their voices are unheard and their concerns are ignored. This isn't merely about traffic. It's about the essence of the community. When this issue pits neighbour against neighbour, which we also saw in Brackenbury, it's time to ask, is this the outcome that you really envisaged? Is this the legacy you want to leave? Residents care about their local businesses. Those businesses aren't just storefronts, they're the dreams which enterprising people have turned into reality. They are families' livelihoods. They provide jobs for people struggling with the cost of living crisis. The testimony of Terry Kirby, who's been forced to close his store in Fulham, is compelling. The can halved his turnover, while the trade in his shop in Wimbledon was unaffected. That tells you something. Reducing traffic sounds like a great idea, but it's easy to forget that traffic brings customers. Traffic brings visitors, suppliers, friends, and family. And through traffic brings all those vital things to ordinary people in neighbouring boroughs. It is not fair to penalise them. The scheme and its justifications raise profound questions about ethics and fairness. Should locals be entitled to cordon off public spaces and deny others access? Should affluent people be allowed to dump what they don't like on their less affluent neighbours' doorsteps? And is it right that the council helps them to do that? Should women feel afraid because they can't get a ride home? How can it be right in a free society to compel anyone to register their visitors or their customers? Looking at the council's own data, air quality in South Fulham is not a problem. Even before the trial, levels of PM 2.5s, PM 10s and ozone were not just at the legal limits, they were below the WHO targets. So how can it be right to cause such social division and economic misery for an issue that never needed addressing? There are serious complaints about the way the council has tried to show the scheme has public support, when there's compelling evidence that it doesn't. There are reports of council consultants falsely claiming that businesses were in favour of the can because the consultants had been threatened with losing their jobs if they said otherwise. And the survey conducted by Opinium was so untransparent in its purpose, so leading its design and wording, that it breaks the rules of the Code of Conduct of the Market Research Society. Such allegations make the council look like the post office. But because Opinium didn't ask about the can, you can't use it to argue that there is public support for the can. So what to do? I revert to my question. Why are you here? Now, I believe actually that people in your shoes go into public service to do good. Yes, you can try to make the can permanent and lap up the revenue, but at what cost? And is that the right thing to do when you consider all the downsides? Community division will be entrenched. People's businesses and livelihoods will be ruined. Rich people might benefit a little, but their less affluent neighbours will suffer a lot. And your reputations could be stained. I urge you not to make it permanent. Oh, okay. Thank you.
I did warn you I'd stop you at 5, and you've actually got 5 minutes, 7 seconds.
Well,
to my clock.
Thank you for the 7 seconds.
It's a pleasure. Can I just begin by asking anyone in the cabinet, would they have any questions to start off with? And I've got a few, but anyone in the cabinet? In which case, can I just stop? Last time we saw you here, I mean, we've seen you at the council, a lot of council meetings, but last time you were at a cabinet meeting, you were here to object to cycle lanes and made similar points and quoted similar statistics. You've said all the way through about this community and our community. Have you moved? Or are you still living in Avonmore?
Let me answer both of those. They're slightly different statistics because I think you'll know that you called the safer cycle lane safer when we know perfectly well it's not.
No.
So let me answer your question, Stephen. So I did, was very clear about that. We know that if you look at accidents on King Street, they've doubled before the thing was built and serious accidents have tripled. That hasn't changed, that statistic. Now, have I moved? No, I'm still a Hammersmith and Fulham resident.
But you don't live in the neighbourhoods concerned.
I don't need to live in the neighbourhoods concerned. In fact, I care about the neighbourhoods concerned because this is my Hammersmith and Fulham like it's yours.
Yes,
Do you live there?
It is.
Do you represent that?
No, but I'm...
No. So we're all entitled to be here.
Yes, we are, certainly are. And I'm the elected leader of the whole borough. I'm just asking, you're a resident, and I'm asking what's in terms of your interest. You've spoken a lot about our community, and the people here, and many of them are people who live literally in the community or have businesses literally in the community. But you live, what, 2 miles away, is it? 1.5 miles?
Yeah, but I have friends
No,
there.
it's okay.
I
It's
visit
okay.
there.
But
I play sport there.
Okay.
I go there
Right.
all the time.
So, all right. So, right. Okay. So you're talking very authoritatively about our community, but London is indeed a series of neighbourhoods, and most people don't recognise they live in a borough. They see themselves as living in districts and areas. You live in Hammersmith and they live in Fulham. And obviously we will hear from people who live in the community for and against, but I wanted to clarify. So you've been engaged in this very early on, haven't you? But you also
since you built it, since you conceived it.
That's right. You also have long campaigned on other issues to do with traffic, as we both know. When you were on the Avonmore Ward Action Group, it was a paper came to me, and I think you might have written to me about increasing the speed limit from 20 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour on Hammersmith Road after we introduced the 20 miles an hour initially. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So in terms of, you often quoted statistics, and often I'm advised afterwards that the officers disagree with your statistics. So without getting too much into that, what was your thinking in arguing for traffic to go faster rather than 20 miles an hour on Hammersmith Road? Why was that an issue you would raise?
Okay, so let me just first of all, I have to correct something that you said in your question.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of officers ever having questioned the statistics that I've put forward.
I can tell you I am. So
what statistics are those?
Just asking about the 20 miles an hour. You argue for 20 miles an hour to be increased to 30 miles an hour. Why was that a key issue for you on the Ward Action Group? One of the first things you wanted us to change?
No, I think one of the first things I didn't want you to change was to take a perfectly good 30 mile an hour road and make it 20. Now you might, let me answer your question though, Stephen. You're saying, why do I think like this? Why? And it's a fair question. Let me explain. In London, I believe the traffic should flow. Now, there are side streets, there are school streets, right, where there's a good argument for 20, but not on main roads. And as you were saying, Hammersmith Road is a main road. Now, I don't think it's right to jam up the traffic unnecessarily. The job of the roads is to convey traffic. Now, you might ask me to talk more about traffic. I will if you want me to.
I'm trying to understand the explanation, because obviously you said you care about different neighbourhoods, you care about driving, but when we've met, you've spoken a lot about traffic going faster or not having cycle lanes, and now we're talking about the cleaner neighbourhood. So I'm trying to understand, as someone who doesn't live in an area, would be quite so motivated, because you've been here at every single meeting we've had, a full council meeting, and I'm trying to learn a little picture of your motivations.
Let me explain.
But you've explained that. Let me ask my next question. Are you a member of the Alliance of British Drivers? Because I've noticed you've been associated with them a lot.
Yes.
Right. Now, that is reputedly a climate change denying body. Does that not put you off? I mean, do you believe in climate change?
Well, I don't quite see how this is relevant, but if you want my honest view on it, I think that the Alliance of British Drivers is perfectly legitimate. It's entitled to bat for motorists.
Yep.
I'm not the least bit ashamed for wanting motorists to be able to drive around. Let's face it, the majority of journeys are done in cars in most of the country. So it's important for those cars to be able to get from A to B.
Yeah.
Now, actually, I think if one wants to talk about this in slightly bigger picture, and my care that cars should be able to travel, it's also very fundamentally about the economy. Now, if you think about what we saw with the pandemic, what we had globally an experiment in trying to stop people driving, getting around. And what did that bring us? It brought us the biggest recession in human history. Now, I don't think people have properly understood how vital it is for people to be able to get about. And when the main means that people need to get about is a car, I think making that difficult for them is not a constructive thing to do.
It would be fair to say that you're an advocate for people using the cars, and you think there are dire economic consequences for anybody who tries to curtail that.
I think people should be able to get about with whatever means they find is important to them. And I don't think it is right for people like Transport for London to say that they know better than you do what is the best way for you to travel. Now, I understand the TfL, you read Healthy Streets if you want, which talks all about getting cars off the roads. I don't believe that's the right way forward. I think of course we want people to use public transport. Of course we want that to happen more. But that's going to be achieved by the tubes being great. It's going to be achieved if the roads are clear. If the roads are clear, the buses can flow. If you jam up the roads, then you jam up the bus routes. If you jam up the bus routes, then people can't use the bus routes or make effective use of the bus routes. All of that is counterproductive. Now, I'm looking at this over a long period of time. And I don't see that what's being done is the least bit smart or constructive or competent or anything. And then when we scratch into it, what we find is I'm sorry to tell you, that the information we get fed is completely duplicitous. So, for example, what we've got coming up, and TfL have just advertised this, it's a cycle track roundabout in Shepherd's Bush, right? Now, what they said is that roundabout has been responsible for 54 accidents, right? And therefore, they have to put a cycle track through it. Now, I'm working with some people who've actually analyzed that data. And I can tell you, there are 54 accidents, but they've been in the general vicinity. On that roundabout, there's been only one cycle accident, and it was slight. Yet they want to build a cycle track through it. Now, that's not smart. And what I'm saying is I do my homework because I can see what's happening. I want the traffic to flow. I want people's businesses to thrive. I want everyone to be able to get about more easily. And I think when somebody is making a mistake and actually making everyone's life more difficult, and we've seen the consequence in South Fulham with the damage to the businesses, that's not right, and that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you very much for explaining it. And look, first of all, I'd be the first to say, one of the best things about our country is there is pluralistic views, and people have a right to express their very different views. But I am quite keen to flush out where yours are coming from, because you've consistently argued the positions that we've talked about tonight, and I was keen to see how deeply rooted that was.
Stephen, I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity, because it's a proper conversation and a debate that you and I have had for the first time ever, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Can I ask, in terms of your professional work, you quote a lot of statistics, and I know you work for David Tarsh Associates. Is that a traffic company, or is it a wider consultancy?
No, it's Tarsh Consulting.
It's Tarsh Consulting.
Tarsh Consulting.
Right.
It's my own practice. I've been running it for 20 years.
And has expertise in traffic, or do you have any traffic or traffic related companies as your clients?
Not traffic, but travel. And I've represented travel companies. Well, I've helped travel companies for 20 years. So I'm familiar with issues around travel professionally. But also...
I noted on your website, it said you had done some work for ExxonMobil and for Volkswagen. Does that, do you get access to their independent?
That's a very long, those clients are a long time ago.
Right.
They're
Okay.
not current clients.
So is that something you have a professional expertise in, or are you someone who's just very interested? You clearly come across as very interested in traffic issues.
I have a professional expertise in travel.
Right.
Global travel. It's why I'm so was able to talk to you about the pandemic and the damage it did, because I know that the economic value of travel to most economies is about 10% of GDP and 10% of jobs.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important. And it's, and those businesses are restaurants, they're hotels, they're all the kinds of businesses that employ lots of people. They're the kinds of businesses that we want to encourage and stimulate, because they're the kinds of businesses that have a very good match with the profile of the economy.
Yeah.
And so I'm sensitive when I see that they're damaged by bad measures.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think that's given me everything. As you've mentioned the pandemic, I should mention, just for the record, you wrote to me on the 30th of March 2020 about and told me you were going to tell people next door I had started a very cynical consultation about the traffic scheme in South Fulham. Can I just assure you, we were the first council to move to an emergency footing in Britain when the pandemic started. We closed care homes, closed parks. I was up all night, often designing posters. I had no idea any consultations were going on. There was nothing cynical. I was working an 18-hour day back on the 30th of March 2020 dealing with the pandemic. I wasn't doing traffic schemes. So I know I've never written back to you, but I can tell you that's not what this was about.
Well,
So,
I respond to that.
I appreciate people are cynical about government, and you see people on January the 6th attacking the Capitol Hill because they wrongly believed Donald Trump had won the election. You see all sorts of conspiracy theories floating around. But let me assure you, that was not what we were doing. We always try and do the right thing. And anyone who thinks we're doing anything other than dealing with a pandemic then doesn't really understand what we were doing.
Well, let me say to you, straight, there's lots of things that your council does very well. And there's one or two that it doesn't. And I'm only here on the ones that I think it doesn't, but there's an awful lot you do well. I don't doubt for a minute your motivation to the cause and your hard work on the pandemic. And I wouldn't criticize anything that you did on the pandemic that was genuinely pandemic related. But when I saw the traffic scheme in going up in March 2020, right, a time when you would have expected critical workers not to be doing that kind of thing, and when I see what I think is wrong with this traffic scheme, which I've been consistent about from the very outset, I could not stand by and say that that's a good thing.
I can assure you that wasn't a directive from me, as you.
No, so it's purely the traffic scheme, Stephen, that I think
actually,
that you and TfL are getting wrong.
We're going to have to move on, but I can tell you, so I'll just finish by saying, to tell you the truth, I don't think that actually was happening. I think it was just a hangover from the process. I think everyone was mobilized to deal with the pandemic back then. And it seems like a distant memory now, but I realize it's only 4 years ago. All right, well, look, thank you, Mr. Tosh. Thank you for your time, and I will move on swiftly and call the next person, but thank you.
You for yours.
Right, next, if I can see, we will reset and invite Caroline, Ms. Caroline Shuffrey. No.
Thank you very much, everybody.
I'll start you when you're ready now.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to discuss Ringo. The purpose is to ask you to look again at the information that has been presented in the Cabinet report in an entirely different way. If you make the decision to make this CAM permanent, then you will also be responsible for putting in motion the operation to establish 13 more LTNs across the whole borough. Your duty is onerous, and I therefore ask you to give me your full attention. Because I can only speak for 5 minutes, I do not have the time to explain in detail the many ways that the Council's use of Ringo technology to issue permits 24/7, 365 does not work correctly. So I ask you to question me about this after my speech. Caroline Broom and White and I have spent hundreds of hours with residents, explaining how to use Ringo and helping them with their appeals when PCNs have been issued. Residents find this whole process very stressful. It is a pity that the council has chosen not to consult with us about this problem and have the benefit of our experience. Permitting only one member of the household to access the Ringo visitors permit on their smartphone, providing a so-called hotline which consists of a confusing recorded mixed message outside office hours, and the failure to continually advertise how to issue a visitor's permit across the cameras means that many residents have given up trying to work with this system. Point 39 of the Cabinet report, I hope you're all writing that down, is revealing. On average, only 300 clean access only visitor permits are issued per month. That's less than 10 per day. That's in an area covering more than 25,000 residents, a significant number of them elderly. How sad that families and friends appear to be no longer visiting us for supper or accompanying us to local cafes and restaurants. This point also shows an increase in Ringo parking activity 22 to 23, comparing the 2 years, to indicate the success of the CAN. However, I have with me government statistics on daily new coronavirus cases in England, and you are welcome to see a copy. Council members may or may not be aware that our coronavirus reached its highest levels not in 2020 or 2021 when we were in lockdown. Instead, the number of cases literally exploded in the first 3 months of 2022. New cases ranged between approximately 250,000 and 50,000 per day. The prevalence of coronavirus during this period profoundly impacted the way we lived our lives, and therefore all comparisons of data shown in this report, 22 versus 23, have no sensible meaning and certainly cannot be used to indicate success of the trial. Point 8 of the report informs us that the proposed scheme maintains full access for visitors to the area without the need to pass through a camera, implying no need for Ringo. Well, no, it doesn't, not in any sensible or practical way. Visitors without a permit coming from the west, wishing to access Sands End Ward, where 11,000 residents live, or Wandsworth Bridge Road, or the roads immediately west of Wandsworth Bridge Road, cannot turn right anywhere along New Kings Road. Instead, they are forced to divert their journey via Fulham Broadway or perform some sort of complicated U-type turn close to Harwood Terrace or Britannia Road, or reorganise their journey to access the area via Wandsworth Bridge. By no stretch of the imagination can this be described as full access. We all live busy lives. Practically, residents and businesses need to issue permits. Cabinet members should defer a decision on the trial until they have possession of correct and pertinent facts surrounding Ringo. The table following point 93 of the report highlights the extraordinary number of complaints and queries related to Ringo, access permits, visitor and business permits, and penalty charges. The trial clearly shows that the use of Ringo technology to issue permits 24/7, 365 does not work correctly. The technology does not adequately support the operation of the CAN. The trial should be abandoned.
Thank you very much.
I can't say something about women, please.
We'll ask you a question about it.
All right,
But
thank you. Thank you.
That is
thank
your
you.
time up, and it's
Thank you.
you know I can
Thank
only
you.
say yeah you have to stick to the constitutional system.
I thought it was there.
Okay, right. Are there any questions from Andrew, Councillor Jones?
Well, on that note, thank you. Could I just ask you about the impact on women that you just identified?
Just the last paragraph I was going to say was, finally, I wish to address the female members of this council. As a woman, you are aware of how scared one can be walking home in the dark alone. Look to your conscience before imposing a scheme that does not offer a solution to enable private hire vehicles to cross the cameras without a permit. I got involved in this process for the very first time with the East scheme during lockdown. My daughter, a barrister, was an essential worker. She was working on an insolvency case in Chambers, and she had to get home at 3 a.m. in the morning. There were no black cabs wandering around, and I'm not sure how much Free Now is established. So she took an Uber and she was dropped on Wandsworth Bridge. 3 days earlier, there had been a stabbing, I think it was one of the county line things, in 3 roads away from us. She had no idea of where the cameras were, where the Uber could go, nor did the Uber driver. And she ended up walking home 10 minutes at 3 a.m. during lockdown, and she was terrified.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Sorry, did you want to? Yep. Do you want to ask a question? No, let's just stick to questions. We'll just ask questions. I've got a few. So are you, I mean, just on the broader principle, because obviously all of the big cities in the world, you know, Paris, New York, everybody is taking measures to reduce car traffic, and they're quite different. Are you against all traffic measures, or are you in favour of reducing traffic?
It might surprise you that my personal choice, I'm sure lots of people in this room wouldn't agree with me, but I actually quite like Sadiq Khan's idea of pay per mile. My son heads the UK delegation in DEFRA on climate change. He speaks on various attitudes, biodiversity. We are not a family that is against climate change. I just do not believe that the method that you're adopting in isolation on your own to create these artificial neighborhoods is saving the planet or changing anything in any form. And I am appalled that so many Bentleys, Ferraris, SUVs are in the west side roads, and those residents are able to drive where they like, when they like, and how they like.
Okay, so you're in favour of reducing traffic going down residential streets in that area?
I'm in favour of a coordinated attempt to sort out traffic, but I believe to do that, you've got to improve public transport, which involves the TfL, and I also think you need the support of the government to do this. I think that Hammersmith and Fulham doing this in isolation is not working, and I also frankly suspect your motives, as you know, for doing it.
Well, I can tell you our motives are to improve the area, and indeed, as those residents groups will know who I've met, we've told them we're not going to do anything unless there's broad public support, and we've said that consistently, and we've indeed asked them to come forward and work with us on the policy. Now, you might have issues with that, but we are where we are now. What I'm interested in is, given what you've said about, you know, your son and your daughter and the issues, I mean, other councils around the city are doing low traffic neighbourhoods, which involves closing roads. Are you against low traffic neighbourhoods, or is it? Are you saying we should do that instead?
I've read extensive academic reports on low traffic neighbourhoods. All the academic reports are caveated. Many of them use council data rather than their own data. I have yet to see one properly acknowledged piece of academic research that demonstrates that low traffic neighbourhoods work to improve the air quality or people's lives in general in the area. If it did exist, I would support it.
So you dispute you're disputing the data, and you're saying you haven't seen any. So that's a fair point, but I mean, we'll hear from the officers in a minute, but it's worth recording that point. Just then on, you said you've had, I read in your submission, 11,000 people support your group, but how many of those live in that direct neighbourhood?
It's over 12,100 and it's still rising. Are you talking about the
yes.
petition I've done?
Yeah.
Well, that's quite interesting because there are no doubt that a huge number of them live locally, but you will be aware, and Mr. Coleman pointed this out to try and quash it in the first place, that not everybody's postcode is shown correctly. For example, my husband, who lives in Fulham along with me, is shown as Roehampton. Somebody who signed the report, who's a friend of mine, shows up as New York. Rosemary Mortimer, I think, explained to me that when she signed her petition, it showed up as a different neighbourhood. So there is no actual way of telling that where everybody lives. But I can tell you, and I can provide you, subsequent to this meeting, if you would like, a breakdown of all the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham who do have an identifiable postcode, and it numbers thousands and thousands.
Yes, I mean, obviously, Rosemary Waterman doesn't live in that area.
No, she started
I
her
mean,
own
yeah,
one, and that's
I'm
it.
just interested in, given what we are by statute required to sample people in the area, and I'm sure other people will ask us questions about the survey later on.
Right.
And you're saying you have a survey.
Yeah.
It
was a petition to ask for a proper consultation.
So you're saying the analysis that only about 200 people on that petition live in the ward is you're saying that's wrong, is it?
Sorry, what's this?
The analysis that only 200 people of the over 12,000 people in your petition live in that direct area of where the clean air neighbourhood. You're saying that's wrong. I can see you shaking your head.
Wrong, yes.
Okay. And would you be able to demonstrate that to us at some future point?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions anyone would like to ask us? Anyone would like to ask? Councillor Holder.
Yes. Can I just clarify? Because it is essential that when you do put out a study that you're able to demonstrate where that study came from. Would you be prepared to undertake that study again?
Which study are we talking about?
Well, the one that you're saying, the petition, which is a study of what you say.
Sorry, Sharon. I started a petition to ask for proper consultation, and it was signed by 12,100 people. What I am able to do on an Excel spreadsheet is to download the names of everybody who signed it, which of course under GPDR rules I cannot provide you, but I do have the postcodes. But pointing that out, the postcodes are not entirely accurate. There are many, many people who've signed under other postcodes in the city who actually live in Fulham.
Okay. All right. But I mean, it's up to you how you organise your petition. I know I've organised them in the
Not
past.
one of you's asked me what's wrong with the way Ringo works.
No.
Nobody wants to know that.
Well, can I just explain the process again to you? We're here to hear your advice. We have other people we can ask about how Wingo works, and I'm sure other people will say that in the dispositions. What we're interested to do is to understand where you're coming from, what evidence you're relying on, what evidence you've collected that's independent, how you verified that. And it sounds like there's a problem in the way you've set your petition up because it doesn't.
No, it's just a change. The purpose of setting that petition up was to establish, in my mind, as well as anybody else's, just whether or not people supported the clean air neighbourhoods. Because I'm believe in democracy. If there have been huge numbers of people supporting clean air neighbourhoods, when I started that petition, I didn't even know if 200 people would sign it. 12,100 people have signed it, and I haven't put huge amounts of publicity into that.
Yeah. Okay. Look. But I've done some reading on it, and I was interested to understand how it's come to this and where people actually live and what it is. And thank you for your explanations and thank you for your deposition.
Thank you.
Right. Next then, I have a Mr. Neil McCarroll.
Hello, good evening. Hi. Are you ready?
Hold on.
Oh,
right. Well, good evening. And I'm starting now. Thank you.
My name's Neil McCarroll. I'm a small business owner in the borough. Last year, my area, Brackenbury, was mooted as the next clean air neighbourhood. We were first introduced to the scheme at a drop-in curated by the council. The three-day event was well attended by both neighboured businesses and residents, and the reaction from the community to it was overwhelmingly and jointly opposed. The businesses had their own concerns, and in light of our misgivings, we were assured that the scheme wouldn't damage trade, and we were told that South Fulham had been negatively affected at all. We were told that the council had been very careful to mitigate any potential damage with all sorts of contingencies, not least of which was issuing a Ringo tablet. Neither I nor other local businesses nor many residents were comforted by this. Brackenbury is a tight-knit community centred around a cluster of long-standing businesses that sit at the heart of it. Encouraged and backed up by strong concerns from business owners and residents, I took it upon myself to travel to South Fulham in April last year to speak to a few people and see what the real impact of the scheme was. The businesses I visited were chosen completely at random, and to my dismay, I found that none of them had anything positive to say about the scheme or the tablet. Trade was down for all. Of the 4 businesses I spoke to, one has since closed down. That's Trade Carpets at 136 Wandsworth Bridge Road. And another, Randall's, has laid off staff, mainly due to a big reduction in footfall. Since then, I've kept in touch with and met many other owners of businesses in the area. There is not only real distress about a downturn in trade, but they all note that traffic on the boundary roads is worse than ever. Congested and slow-moving traffic with engines idling are increasing pollution, not cutting it down. The congestion on the boundary roads is something I've also personal experience of. I run a busy tool hire company in Brackenbury, and my work vehicles are on the road much of the time. These vehicles are fitted with trackers so can be easily monitored, including when they're on the Wandsworth Bridge Road crawling or at a standstill in traffic. The journey takes them twice as long as it did before the South Fulham traffic scheme. So this congestion, which in the view of many has been caused by the scheme, has an impact on businesses further afield in the borough. Now, I also want to comment on data provided by the council on page 76 and appendix 6, which show MasterCard spending figures during the Cannes trial. As I understand it, it was explicitly MasterCard, and I think the MasterCard data is being misinterpreted and thus paints a distorted picture. As a shopkeeper myself, I now take far more MasterCard payments than I used to. I first noticed it about a year ago, where once Visa had been the norm, MasterCard seemed proliferate. Having researched this, it seems that since 2021, NatWest has been replacing expired Visa debit cards with MasterCard ones. And according to an article in Reuters from the 4th of February 2021, NatWest has become the latest British lender to switch to issuing MasterCard debit cards from Visa in an agreement that includes 16 million consumer and business customer cards. And I wonder, could this go some way to explaining why, as per the graphs in your dossier, the usage of MasterCard seems up? To conclude, it is my view and the view of many local residents that independent shops, restaurants and bars provide the heart of the community, and none of the businesses I've spoken to or have spoken to since feel like they're being heard by the council in relation to the Clean Air Neighbourhood Scheme. When making your deliberation today, I would ask you to please reflect on that fact, and that small local businesses are the grassroots of the local economy, providing jobs and opportunities for local people. Damage them and you not only close them down and lose jobs, but you also damage the quality of life in those very communities you claim to want to protect. Thank you.
Can I just first take exception to we claim we want to protect? Look, I appreciate you have your own views, Mr. McCarroll, but it is quite wrong of you to say that. We have taken measures on the basis that we are determined to improve the quality of life for everyone in our borough, and that includes businesses. That's why we have more economic growth than all of West London put together, and £6 billion worth of investment in the borough, which other people would give an arm and a leg for. So we are determined to grow businesses. We try to be on businesses' sides. I appreciate you might think we're not doing that, but we will always try and be on the side of businesses and take measures to do that. Now, does anyone have any questions for Mr. McCarroll? Right. Can I just ask you, just again, this is a residential scheme for South Fulham. Where do you live?
Well, I live in Brackenbury, as I said.
Right.
But the reason sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So you were motivated to get involved because of a debacle that was ended up as the Better Brackenbury scheme.
Yeah. Well, basically, when that was mooted, because as I tried to explain in the beginning, but we were told when the idea was pitched to us that businesses in South Fulham hadn't been affected negatively at all. They had this Ringo tablet that was facilitating easy trade. So I decided to go and see for myself.
Okay, and I appreciate you have a lot of expertise in terms of running your business, but in terms of statistical analysis, in terms of business support in terms of other things you've made reference to. Is this, I mean, the anecdotal evidence was very welcomely received, but is that what it is? Is it anecdotal evidence? Do you have any, I mean, do you have a...
Well, I haven't looked at anyone's books, but I've spoken to people and they've told me that takings are down significantly. And you can check on Companies House about staff losses. And
could that be for other reasons? I mean, some people in the area have told me they've been boycotting some of the local businesses who've been most vehemently in favour of getting rid of the can, you know, because you're right, it has caused division. So that would show there's been a cost of living crisis, rampant inflation, business rates. There's lots of different reasons. Are you saying any of those might not be relevant to why a business might fail?
Well, as a business owner in Brackenbury, without wishing to disclose too much information about it, my business is going from strength to strength. So, and I have similar conditions to most of the other businesses I've spoken to. We're not all the same industry necessarily, but my business rates are affected in the same way: cost of living, cost of products, etc. So,
yeah. And just to clarify, your business is tool hire.
Correct.
And but you've also made references to restaurants and shops and stuff like that. And that would be quite different marketplaces.
Well, I need to point out that they're so important to the community.
Sure. You don't need to point that out.
Sorry.
And your business would have customers from quite, I suspect, quite a wide ranging area, wouldn't it? If it's tool hire.
Well, yeah, masses within the borough, but also we've been established for 40 years. So we've established a citywide client base.
And that would be very different to a local community cafe or other type of bakers or something like that.
Well, it depends. I mean, some bakers or butchers, there's one very famous one 2 streets away from me that attracts customers from all over the city. So,
okay, look, all I would say, I appreciate you're here and you opened by talking about the Brackenbury area, which is my ward. It was a debacle. We put people on the committee. I'm afraid some people leaked stuff who were on the committee, which was wrong and a misinterpretation of things. It did whip up a terrible amount of anger. The Better Brackenbury project itself was a consultative group, and the consultative group was carrying out a wider consultation. None of that, I think that court, you know, it was a very difficult time, and I think there's still a lot of very upset people. But as I said to you previously, there was an awful lot of misunderstanding about that. You know, campaigning against a consultation from a consultative group and saying we're not doing any consultation. It was never the case. It was the very early process of a consultation, and I'm afraid there was an awful lot of bad blood wrongly whipped up by people who some of whom had been on the committee. So I think that was not in any way indicative of what's happened here, and I wouldn't liken it to what's happened here.
I'm not here to settle scores, believe me, and the only reason I'm here is concern for other small businesses who I've got to know quite well in the last 12 months, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's.
All right. Well, I'll conclude then by just saying, let me once again assure you, having been run my own small business for years, of highest priority is to grow small, medium-sized businesses, to create scale-up space for businesses to go from small to medium-sized, and to create offices for medium-sized businesses to become larger businesses. We're very determined to grow a place to do placemaking where butchers and bakers and coffee shops can replace what is dying high streets around the country. We've lobbied against business rates and will take many other measures. So I can tell you we are very alert to wanting to see businesses thrive, and it would be quite wrong to think for anybody to say that we would take measures that would knowingly damage businesses. This scheme has gone on for some years, and I can tell you every meeting I've ever had about it, we've gone through the business data a lot. It's a key concern for many of the reasons you say, and that is something I think we might agree on. So thank you, and I will call the next person.
Thank you very much.
I have Alison Roger next.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Alison Roger, a couture clothing designer based in New Kings Road. I am chair of Parsons Green Business Association, treasurer of South Fulham Business Association, and New Kings Road Shopwatch administrator. I'm regularly in contact with local businesses, and I'm the person contacted to forward messages and news from the business and enterprise team and our SNT. I'm astonished by statements in the report relating to our South Fulham businesses. Firstly, emails. The council table showing sentiment by emails received from businesses between December 22 to January 23, the start of the scheme, when non-permitted vehicles were not fined for driving through Cannes, and December 23 to 24. I question why the period February 23 to November 23 has been omitted. This was the period when non-permitted vehicles would be fined and businesses noted declines in revenue and customers. Many emails were sent by businesses requesting a meeting with councillors responsible for Cannes. I have a dossier of 19 heart-wrenching emails, all ignored by these councillors. A meeting with councillors responsible for the Cannes was arranged last June at Koji Restaurant. Councillors would not accept our many examples of damage to businesses and upheld their views that negative effects were not caused by Cannes. Councillor Sharon Holder assured a follow-up meeting within 1 month. Nothing happened. An online meeting with resident groups took place last September. This was an embarrassing and vile display of hostility from South West 6 residents towards businesses. I and other businesses did not have the opportunity to speak at that meeting. Many emails with negative sentiment were sent to Stephen Cowan and other councillors from businesses during this important period in the Cannes trial. Why are these totals not included in the table? The council states that Ringo data and GLA data on footfall and spending indicates greater business and economic activity in the area. This council refuses to accept actual revenue accounts from businesses, and the reality is not in line with the council's data. I have figures which I can speak about later. How can there be such a difference on such an important point? There are many more examples of failing businesses, and if the council genuinely cared, they would show concern and help. The majority of our businesses sell quality goods and services. We are destination businesses, and in the council's attempt to create a destination shopping area with its Cannes scheme, it is actually killing our specialist businesses. Customers complain that queues of traffic on Wandsworth Bridge Road and New Kings Road and threat of fines are a deterrent. And despite business access through Cannes, their journeys take too long. For example, I've lost a client from Purley who needs to drive. What was a 30-minute journey for her now takes 1.5 hours. When I took my premises in New Kings Road in 2017, Hammersmith and Fulham Council proudly proclaimed their borough was the best for business. Since the council's desire to be the greenest borough, our businesses have taken the hit. A piece of paper. Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't me. Oh, here it is. It's stuck. This council has pulled the rug, done an about turn. Whichever phrase, is clear to see that this council does not care one jot about our South Fulham businesses and has an attitude of businesses come and go. Our businesses want the scheme removed. Finished.
Can I ask, does anyone have any questions in Cabinet? In that case, can I ask some?
Yeah.
You said I'm quite interested to understand this because I can accept a business like yours is a destination business. What does it do?
I'm a couture clothing designer. We make bespoke clothing for women.
Right. So you're going to have people coming from how far?
I have clients in the States.
Right. So
worldwide, mainly. I was previously based in Belgrade, Pimlico, 10 years, Belgravia for 4 years, Chelsea Green for 3 years before double rent in Chelsea pushed me further out.
Okay, so obviously we don't want your business to fail at all. So I'm sorry to hear that you're saying it is. Why? What are the reasons you think people aren't coming to see you that are to do with the cleaner neighbourhood?
I have a number of clients based in Wandsworth, Clapham, Battersea, who have been fined when they've come through. They've kind of taken their usual route, received fines, some of them up to 3 fines. Others don't want to sit in traffic, like the lady I just quoted. And they're busy women. I dress quite busy professional women on the whole, and they do not have time to sit in that traffic. I'll be perfectly honest. I would say that 70% of my clientele come by public transport, but it's those, because I was based further east, my client base has grown from that area. I also have clients that come from Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, Hampshire, all over.
So, I mean, the officers will say everyone is exempt if they are doing business or visiting somebody. Why is that not working for your customers?
My customers have been frightened, and they do not want to come anymore.
Sorry, what's frightened?
They're being frightened. They're frightened by getting a fine. They don't want to sit in traffic. They've been deterred by just feeling not wanted by these cameras.
Okay, look, we will ask officers later on at the end of the delegations about traffic, and they will, I think, assert that traffic has fallen. So there's less chance of being sitting in traffic. If your customers are coming to see you, they can still drive down the side streets.
They do, yeah, I can give them access, yes.
Because they would be able to say, I've just been to visit this place, not even have to buy anything from you. I've just been to visit this place. I am a customer, and they would be exempt. So they can do that.
Yes.
So it's more complicated, I give you that, but there's no reason why they should be fined or stuck in traffic if there's less traffic. So what I'm interested to understand is if there are the 2 reasons that you're losing custom, I mean, is there anything else you would want the council to do if it were to go ahead with the scheme that would mitigate things for your business?
I think it has to be made easier. I work on usually an hourly appointment basis. I have clients who come in. Sometimes they haven't remembered the zone where they've parked their car. It can take 10 or 15 minutes to actually register their vehicle and get them on my Ringo app. I'm a resident in SW6 as well. I haven't got a tablet, but I use my residence app. That's eating out time out of my appointment time, which should be a pleasurable experience. Having people, my clients are buying into an experience and want to enjoy having their clothes made. I also find it very difficult to remember when a new client comes to me to start off the conversation, "Oh, hi, Alexandra, how did you get here today? Because if you come by car, I'm going to have to go through this whole process." My automatic and long-standing experience of my business and my approach to my business is to say, "Hi, Alexandra, how lovely that you're getting married. And, let's really enjoy looking at dresses today and working out what's going to work for you." I'm afraid that's the way that I am. And it's puts a negative front to my customers to have to go through, "How did you get here today?" if I don't know already.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. If we'd done a low traffic neighbourhood, we would have closed streets. They would have been stuck in traffic on the main road, but they can come through residential streets if they're visiting a business, which is part of the reason for it. But once they get in, they have to pay a parking fee if they don't live in the borough, because they don't even live in the parking zone. So that would be a hassle. And then you're saying it's an extra hassle for them to have to register.
Yeah. And then the other thing, for example, I had a client in today. She lives in Belgravia, met me when I was in Ebury Street previously. the traffic scheme has kind of fallen flat on its face with her because she now drives. She used to take the 22 bus from Sloane Square, come to me, but the bus takes so long now, or is so unreliable if she's going for lunch with a friend, or today she was going to play bridge after her appointment with me. She drives. She's a member of Hurlingham, so she drives to Hurlingham and then back. So that's defeating the object of cutting cars.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about later. We'll hear that from the officers. The officers, I think, as is in the report, will say it's cut cars. There are other reasons why sometimes you can have more traffic, but they will say it's cut cars in the area and cut congestion. So we will hear that, I think, later on. We'll be able to ask them questions about it. But I am concerned to hear that you're saying you're losing business in any way. And I can understand why people might drive from a much wider area than if you were a baker, butcher, or local candlestick maker or sort of thing. You know, I can see that. Is there anything, we're still to make our mind up, but if we were to do this, is there anything you would want us to do immediately that would make your business able to not lose, able to make it easier for your customers?
I want my customers to be able to travel. I think the situation with Fulham, South Fulham, we're on a border with Chelsea, we're on a border with Wandsworth. So for people like, those residents, people who live in Chelsea or would come from Chelsea or Wandsworth are actually more local to our businesses than Shepherd's Bush or perhaps even Brook Green. I don't know circular, the mileage distance out. They are our local customers.
I appreciate
and
that.
They are being hurt or disadvantaged for having to come over our border.
Well, look, they've always had to pay parking fees when they've come to see you, so that's the first.
Well, even people within the borough.
But secondly,
have to
they
pay
won't
parking
have
fees.
to. They won't if they're coming to visit you. And we should get this message out because you're right. People are frightened. There's a lot of bad information being put out there. Some of it by bad actors. About it being very difficult to come, but you're absolutely right. If they are coming from Wandsworth, the only charge they should have to pay is a parking ticket, and it should be very easy for them to put their registration in and then be exempt, and that would also allow them, because what we're aiming to stop is cut through traffic. People who want to get to somewhere else and are just using it as a cut through.
Yeah.
We don't want to stop people visiting their friends and relatives. We certainly don't want to stop people visiting businesses. So it should be easy for that to happen. And that's something I'm very interested in because, it is a bit more of a hassle, but no more of a hassle than filling in a parking area and checking the signposts. That is something that you've certainly driven home. But if there's something we can do, any advice you've got, something we can do to make that even easier, what would it look like in your shop? A person walks in, they've parked the car around the corner, they've bought themselves, an hour or 2 hours parking, and then they come in for their appointment. What would it need to be to take away that fear and make them? They've even cut through the back streets to get there, so they don't have to wait a Wandsworth Bridge Road.
I will be perfectly honest. I think it's too late.
You think the bad news is
I
really
have a tailor. He's 87. He loves to do a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Lives in Kingston. He actually had a stroke at Christmas.
Sorry to hear that.
Because he can't drive. He feels like he can't drive his car. He's got an older car.
Right.
So he would have to pay £12 for
to get it
ULEZ.
Yeah.
And he started coming on the train because he loved to work, but he's now been ill. What would it take? I do think it's too late. I think many of our customers have gone elsewhere now. I think, one or two might come back, but I think we've lost a lot of I think I've lost a number of my loyal clients. Can I also mention news from today? Because I had a ring around of the latest status on some of our businesses, and this is really quite sad. News that 3 businesses based in the industrial area of Carnworth Road are to close with a loss of 52 jobs. Lewag, a shop opposite me, dog grooming place, should be really busy. Also suffered from clients not struggling or fear of travelling to the area. That closed about 3 weeks ago. Another florist has announced this just recently that they're closing down. Actual accounts, this is 7 different businesses. 40% lower turnover, lost 3 staff. Revenue significantly lower. Earnings down 50% between 2020 and 2022, looking to sell my house. Revenue down 10% year on year since 2021. 45% decrease in revenue between 2022 to 2023. Business down 35% from December 2022 to 2023.
I'm sorry, can I just cut in? I appreciate you've got a long list and I've seen similar information, but you're saying all of that's because of a cleaner neighbourhood?
This is what they say. Yeah, it's the loss of their
but you accept
trade.
that if someone was coming to visit the business, they wouldn't actually have to pay anything. It's just you're saying it's too difficult and there's too much fear out there.
The traffic, my passing trade has declined noticeably.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, look, is there anything else you'd like to say in summing up? I understand the point you're making. We're determined.
I would be very happy to talk with your officers. I'm a designer. I have a designer engineering kind of brain. I'd be very happy. And I think, to be honest, our businesses should have been part of the design of this scheme. We were not included.
Look, this is a 3-year scheme. This has been looked at for a long time. It's not like the Batter Brackenbury thing, which was a disaster for all sorts of different reasons, and there was an awful lot of misinformation circulated. This is something that we spent finite periods of time going through, looking at lots of information and testing the officers ourselves. Whatever happens, we would want to engage you and find out what we can do to grow your business. And we're not, I promise you, we're not seeing that as a price worth paying. We want your business to thrive. We want to get information out there that businesses are welcome, and we will do anything we can to help you on that front.
Thank you.
So we would definitely engage you afterwards, whatever happens.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your information. Okay, next I have Vivian Goldstein. Okay, right, off, ready.
Hello. I see nothing in the Cabinet papers of how it plans to heal the division in the community or to support businesses that say they are ailing despite your data, footfall and aggregate MasterCard spending increase. I've lived in Parsons Green for over 20 years. I formed the Parsons Green Residents Group because I was so concerned at the damage these LTNs are doing, not only to our roads from the displaced congestion and pollution, but also my observation of the erosion of the wonderful community spirit of this lovely area where I feel so fortunate to live. I feel that this council is not showing any respect, other than what you said 5 seconds ago, towards the vast majority of residents and businesses. The council has worked with a small number of residents who directly benefit from the traffic cameras, but has failed to engage in any meaningful way with the wider community. In your Cabinet papers, you include a series of letters written by residents from a small number of roads inside the can. There's no doubt that the majority of residents in Perrymead and Clancarty feel very strongly that their road needs protection, but it's disingenuous of you to include letters from residents in Edenhurst and Hurlingham Gardens. There are more than 100 households, and yet there was a very small number of residents who signed letters. The council said the survey would reach all 15,000 households, but for example, Chelsea Creek, Lilyville Road and Sunlight Mews didn't receive them, and delivery in Stevendale Road was sporadic. I've witnessed overbearing culture promoted by the council at public council meetings, and they ride roughshod over anyone who isn't agreeing with them. I have been at a meeting with local businesses where the councillor was questioned 3 times, asking them if they had read a financial report which they had put together by businesses to illustrate how much business had been lost to this traffic scheme, the councillor eventually admitted that they hadn't read it. I find this dismissive and disrespectful to business owners' efforts. Also at that meeting, a senior council officer told a local businessman that they knew of friends and family who have businesses that were doing well, and further stated that this person must be running their business badly. There were around 50 people at that meeting. The incredulity of this remark caused a huge intake of breath by these business people who were being so disrespected. I'm also horrified that rather than accepting that businesses are suffering as a result of the camera scheme, the pro-scheme supporters have publicly pushed the idea to boycott these businesses because they dare to complain. Nowhere was this more appalling than during the Zoom meeting set up by the council with both residents and businesses, where the first speaker from the pro-scheme residents explicitly stated that he was boycotting a particular business on the Wandsworth Bridge Road who did not support the can. It was also shocking that this speaker was not immediately stopped by the council officer chairing the meeting. Business lies at the heart of our community, and the owners of these businesses are our neighbours and our friends. I'm appalled by the businesses will come and go philosophy that the council appears to have adopted. I've also witnessed the creation of unfair air zones by pushing traffic onto main roads, unfairly exposing these residents to increased pollution. This has pitted those who are privileged to live in the leafy side streets against those who live on the busier roads. And due to the standstill traffic on Wandsworth Bridge Road, my 83-year-old friend has often found it quicker to get off the bus and walk through the pollution, and then add the congestion and pollution on the King's Road, the New King's Road, Harwood Road. This scheme has created huge stress to thousands who are struggling to manage their lives under a camera scheme that operates 24/7, 365, and the council have declared that they won't change it. I want a vibrant place filled with independent shops and restaurants and blah, blah. As I started, I'm very concerned at the social division this is causing, and I'm begging you to rethink this clean air scheme so that you can bring the community back together, please. Thank you.
That was 4 minutes, 39 seconds, so you were well below. But don't worry, we'll ask you.
I did race it.
We'll ask you some questions. Look, you know, I mean, you made some similar points to others.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's fine. You know, you should hear our speeches at the full council. Oh, you have heard our speeches at the full council. I have. So I can assure you, our vision is not to drive businesses out. You know, if you look around the country, and I travel a lot around Britain, and also around Europe and the United States, Britain is unique in having a struggling high street in many ways. It's not like when you go to Paris or Bruges or indeed New York. And there's many different reasons for that, ranging from business rates. And we are very keen to see a thriving community, not least because in the post-pandemic world, more people are working from home. And we think the opportunity of having people working from home, but maintaining their social needs in local coffee shops, meeting friends in local bars, going to local restaurants, going to local butchers. This is all good as far as we're concerned. So the objective is to do the opposite, is to make these things thrive. Taking the number of cars out in residential streets is proven around the world as one of the things that you do to increase a village feel. And that has been tried and tested, lots of academic papers on it, and you'll hear a bit about our officers. What we're talking about is not the LTN, which I think, was it you who mentioned it? Yeah.
I said LTN. I don't even know what you call it anymore.
So,
it's all the same
so
thing.
low traffic neighborhoods came about some years ago. What they involve is closing streets and literally stopping people driving. We've chosen not to do that. So the money that is raised from people who are the only people who should pay are people cutting through. They're visiting you or visiting a business. They should be zero charge. And I appreciate I've heard a lot of evidence about that. The money we would raise is to go in those neighborhoods. Dealing with flood defenses, for example, there's large parts of our borough covered, continuously flooded, and Thames Water does nothing. Putting sud schemes in cost millions, and that's what that money would go into. It's ring fence money. So there's a lot of bad information floating around, but no one is trying to do anything other than enhance the neighborhood. So what I'm interested in is, you think we're trying to do the opposite. I understand that you do. and assure you we're not, but to ask you if we were to change it, because I've said to officials all the time, I want businesses to thrive. You know, I want local people to have no hassle when their great aunt comes to visit them. You know, we want less traffic, less congestion, which is what you're going to hear we've got. What would you say, you know, is not right then, or you'd like to see changed about the camera scheme? Because we think that's better than closing streets.
I agree with you. The fact at one of these meetings, they said, somebody on the council said, our cameras are able to change the timings, but we're not going to. That was literally what they said. So I'm saying we're talking about women being safe and stuff. So for example, from 8 o'clock at night to maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, what difference does it make if people can go through the side streets? That's what I'm asking. Well,
8 o'clock is key school drop-off time, so it makes a big difference.
8 o'clock at night.
All right.
8 o'clock at night
All
till
right.
6 o'clock in the morning.
All right, okay.
I'm saying the evening, which means that when women are taking buses, there's still traffic in these side roads so that it puts predators off.
Okay. All right.
Secondly.
And that's purely for taxi firms, is it?
Well, for everyone.
Yeah.
Why not? But I don't think you're advertising all of this because so many people don't know. And I think much bigger advertising. And I also think if you want less cars on the road, which I completely understand,
yeah,
we need to take a couple of steps back and ensure that there's more public transport available. I mean, maybe look, I'm not an engineer, but I'm thinking that Uber do a pool thing. I'm not sure how well supported it is, but maybe if you paid, I don't know, £1, you could have these small minivans that actually traveled and took people down side roads and stuff. I just, you know, I don't think you're helping everybody. And lots of people do need their cars. Like if you've got 3 kids and they're going to hockey this and cello practice that, you can't get on a bus with a load of kit and a cello and...
No, look, I like you, I'm not an engineer, but I have spent 20 years listening to highways engineers telling me stuff, and our job is to ask them questions and to test what they know, and sometimes maybe get them to do different things or find different solutions. So that's what we're all here for. But you know what we get to do is to give them objectives: reduce the traffic, grow the neighbourhood, give us you know all those different things, and that's what we're.
I loved what you said to Alison. I'm really, really pleased that you're listening, because everything else I've been to recently, I've not heard, I have not felt that the council in any way, shape or form have been listening.
Right.
So I really hope.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I promise you we have, and I promise you behind the scenes we give absolutely rigorous scrutiny to this stuff, because we don't want, you know, this should be a thing that improves the area for everybody, not just a few. We want this to be the start of something that rapidly cleans the air. Someone said the air isn't dirty. It really is. There's not a part of London that meets World Health Organization standards. And if you talk to genuine experts like Professor Frank Kelly at Imperial, genuine world-class experts who people listen to, they will tell you that the air is extremely dangerous in London, and people just don't know about it. I went to see my asthma consultant, and he asked me what I was doing to clean the air in Charing Cross 2 years ago. So the people in the know definitely advise we need to take action to do that. But obviously,
you've got to help us. You've got to help us with public transport, local public transport.
Yeah, we will come on to that. I mean, there's a broader plan. But I can assure you, this scheme has been gone through a lot, and we're here to test the officers. They work for all of us. We work for the residents, and we will take those points into account. Is there anything you'd like to say in summing up?
Change the timing on the cameras, and to not, well, get rid of the cameras, but not to be so dismissive.
Well, I promise you,
This
if you
is-
felt this
I
before,
understand.
I can only apologise for that. We're definitely not. And the fact that you've given up your evening to come take part in a democratic process is, for me, certainly, and I know for the Cabinet, deeply respected. And so I really appreciate your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much for that. We will now move on to, oh God, I haven't got my glasses on. Caroline Brooman White.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sorry. Right, starting now.
Hello, everyone. I've lived on the Wandsworth Bridge Road for over 40 years. I wish to explain to you that the introduction of the camera scheme has negatively impacted my life, my family's life, and the life of the neighbours and businesses I know and love. I feel that the report put before you does not provide a comprehensive picture of how the congestion, pollution, brake and tire dust, and general decline of many businesses on the road is destroying the heart of this wonderful community. There has been such a notable increase in lorries, vans, and trucks, and buses in the morning are literally not able to move northwards. The stress this has caused so many people is appalling. There is no respite as the cameras are on at weekends as well. My involvement in the community means that I'm in touch with hundreds of residents in the area and known to many businesses. I categorically dispute the notion that the residents and businesses on the Wandsworth Bridge Road are happy with the scheme as it stands. A friend visited nearly every business a few weeks ago, and most are suffering, but now frightened to speak out against the scheme in case they are boycotted. I was a member of the Wandsworth Bridge Road Working Party. I fully understood there was a traffic problem in South Fulham and had lots of sympathy for roads such as Perrymead and Limber, but I was someone who felt it was important to implement a scheme that would be a benefit to everyone. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, the Working Party was disbanded, and so was the West Working Party, and I and others were disenfranchised. And from that moment, the people I felt I was meant to represent no longer had a voice. On the suggestion of a trustee of the Wandsworth Bridge Road Association, we started a new residents group, which for some reason the council have chosen, despite many, many requests, not to sit down with us face to face in a private meeting. Pollution. There are days when you can smell and taste the pollution on the Wandsworth Bridge Road, but according to Appendix 4, all the pollution graphs are nearly identical, which shows that pollution is exactly the same in every street, regardless of traffic. Sadly, I'm not an expert on pollution. I have, however, occasionally followed the data provided by the Air Quality England on the monitors in Fulham, and it seems sometimes it's higher in Fulham than it is in Hammersmith. The graphs also only go up to September 2023. I would love for you to arrange for me to talk to someone who could explain why I now need to change my filter on my air purifier every month rather than every 3 months, which used to be the case. What is causing the smell and taste on the Wandsworth Bridge Road? Is it brake dust? Is it some kind of dust? Oh, and incidentally, the traffic data only goes to November 2023, and Wandsworth Bridge Road was closed for 6 months of that. And if you actually look at the traffic report itself, you'll find that lots of data is missing. I read with interest that if a personal business emailed in more than once, that only one to complain about the scheme, only one email is counted. If it was counted in the early responses, then naturally that would have been more emails in the early days rather than the late days. I was heartened to read number 57, which says there's a reputational risk to Hammersmith and Fulham with both residents and other members of the public. You can all read this. I therefore would love somebody to arrange to have a meeting with me I urge Cabinet to not make a decision tonight, but wait until you have considered our deputations. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being so erudite. 4 minutes, 23 seconds, which
Oh my God, I
should we
could say
take bets,
much
really,
more.
shouldn't we? Okay, look, well, thank you so much for that. Does anyone in the Cabinet have any questions? No, I will just ask a few. Look, you say that you say that you think things have got worse in the area.
Much worse on the Wandsworth Bridge
On the
Road for
Wandsworth
me,
Bridge Road.
much worse. I have traffic outside my house from early in the morning, sometimes all day, and weekends where I used to go and sit and have lunch outside. Not possible.
Now, look, I appreciate this. You know, you're not going to be a statistical scientist or anything, but can I ask, is that
trucks and vans?
what is that anecdotal? Is that your?
Well, it's
what you think? Yeah. Or do you have you been, have you got access to any other information?
Sadly,
Okay.
if I say something, that's what's so upsetting. If I say something, it's anecdotal. If someone says something where we love living on the Wandsworth Bridge Road.
No, that's anecdotal too.
That's
that's anecdotal as well, I promise you. I'm trying to understand because I've been told by officials that there's less traffic. So,
but I think the traffic may be at different times.
Right.
So in the morning, if I wanted to get a bus, I'd leave the house at 9:15, get on the bus, get to work. Now, that's not a possibility. If I want to leave my house at 9:15, not going to get on a bus. And I don't really want to walk down the Wandsworth Bridge Road with that pollution, which apparently doesn't exist.
well, I can assure you pollution does exist. I mean, the traffic scheme definitely does cut traffic. It has taken a lot of pollution
But
out.
it's got all this dust coming. I mean, my
that
door's
might,
covered in dust.
Yeah, that might be for other reasons, but I mean, London it's in a basin. It is without doubt polluted. It is, if you go outside of London to the seaside or some countryside, you will see the difference within a matter of days on how you feel. So there's no doubt that London's polluted. The problem is we live in an age, as Michael Gove said when the Brexit referendum, where we're fed up of listening to experts. Well, I like experts, and there's an awful lot of people who claim to be experts who aren't. And that's what we've got to try.
I'm not an expert. But
Neither am I.
I can see outside my house, and on a Sunday, there's no way we could sit outside a restaurant, sadly, anymore.
Right. I promise you we will take that up. I mean, the aim is to get your even cleaner and to make your neighborhood even more happy one, and to have more businesses and more buzz. That is the objective. We wouldn't be doing it otherwise. That's a fairly scientific thing because we have to rely on scientists from Imperial, scientists from public health, but also more importantly, in this particular instance, highways engineers and other experts our job is to test them and question them and see if we agree with their analysis or not. Okay, look, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, just why has no one ever met with us or done anything?
I've seen you at a lot of meetings myself, so I'm assured that there's been a lot of meetings in the community you've been at. So I don't know what.
But having been on the Wandsworth Bridge Road Working Party, suddenly that was abolished, and I was no more.
Well, I can promise you, going forward, we would very much like to listen to your advice and hear your views, and your well-being is a priority for us.
Okay, thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your testimony.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. This is. We have now Donald Grant.
Thank you. Good evening. Nice to be back. We missed it the last one. So I'm here on behalf of my neighbours and myself on Wandsworth Bridge Road, who do not wish to make the South Fulham traffic scheme permanent or to have more streets added to it. Instead, we're asking you to work with the greater part of the community who've been largely shut out, as we heard, so we can come up with representative resident-led alternatives to reduce the traffic problems. So the report in front of you on your laptops has been carefully written to imply success from this trial. It picks data and facts to justify moving the traffic and pollution from generally affluent streets to already busy, more populous streets. But for the people using Wandsworth Bridge Road and New Kings Road and Kings Road and others in Chelsea and so on, this report does not show success. My neighbours and I have suffered from this displaced, slower moving and more idling traffic, which would have used other public roads throughout Fulham, travelling more directly. And that's resulted in a detriment to residents on Wandsworth Bridge Road. So what makes a minority of my neighbours more important than my next door neighbour and me and all the other users of Wandsworth Bridge Road? I don't understand that. The report also doesn't spell out that the traffic measurements are mostly from the time when the bridge was closed. Doesn't say it compares traffic against the highest ever period of COVID as the baseline. There's no data on buses, particularly the 295, which I use in the 28. It serves many areas here, Hammersmith, North End Road, the hospital, Brook Green, Olympia to Canton, and another way to Clapham Junction. The increased journey times, the very real decimation during peak hour queues, the number of early route terminations, that's all missing from your report. It also doesn't acknowledge residents' experiences in minicabs. It's all perceived, or how some women feel at night. And it's silent on the huge number of contraventions, even the fines it generates from our families and friends. That in itself is a sign it's not working for most people. And in the meantime, driving on the trial protected streets has become easier for residents, the opposite of the clean air and active travel aims. You've done it by displacing most traffic and pollution to me and other residents in Wandsworth Bridge Road and other roads, increasing idling, slow-moving vehicles even further. We'd like our air quality to be properly considered too, reported at the start and the end of the trial, not when Wandsworth Bridge has been worked on, as this report does. It also implies that overall air quality improvements have been down to the camera scheme, yet it only reports on the now quiet streets, not where the traffic has gone to. There's no impact has been considered from the newer cars or the migration to fully electric and hybrid vehicles or the ULEZ expansion. Why should our air quality be reduced to increase somebody else's air quality? And if you expand this scheme to Clancarty and Settington roads, I'd also like to know why you prefer these residents over me and my neighbour signing my deputation. Why are these large public roads lined on both sides with parked SUVs and luxury cars not made one way, or parking allowed only on one side instead? Councillor Cowan, you said in Cabinet in 2021 that you'd not impose this scheme if residents didn't want it. Clearly, some of the beneficiaries want it, and there are some here today. But it's clear from every survey, including your own, that the majority of residents don't. However, this report you have implies that the opinion survey shows residents want the scheme. The survey did not ask that question. It didn't explain it would be used to make the LTN permanent. It didn't explain that air quality was not fully measured in Wandsworth Bridge Road, which has obviously got worse when you've restricted 3 of the 4 main routes, north, east and west from the bridge to the bridge. I asked for the largest residents group, which I chair, to help formulate the survey so we could promote it with confidence to our members. That was refused too. So I think in summary, if this scheme becomes permanent and extended, it's going to plague every council meeting, every election and every council with influence until it's removed. There'll be continued media coverage and so. Instead, we and other residents who've been refused the airtime to date want to end this trial and start again on a workable solution, one which doesn't just reserve particular streets for selected residents whilst the majority suffer. So, Councillor Cowan, will you keep your word tonight?
Yes, we've always kept our word, but there seems to be some dispute when you're reading of the survey. You know, we're statutorily obliged to carry out surveys, so we will interrogate the officers about that survey, and I'll take up your concerns. Just on that, what are you saying is wrong with the survey?
So the survey, well, there's several things wrong with the survey if we were going to use it to justify extending this CAN LTN scheme. First thing was in your report, it strings 3 disjointed sentences together to imply that they asked the question, do you want this LTN or CAN made permanent? It didn't. It said, do you support moves to reduce out of borough traffic? Yes. And then it put 3 questions together. It didn't once say, do you think we should be doing this with this camera scheme, which finds our friends, neighbours, relatives, workers, suppliers, customers, carers from outside the boroughs, some in 2 streets away? You know, people who don't now come to Sainsbury's because they got to take a long 45-minute route in peak times around Wandsworth Bridge Road. Didn't ask these questions. It asked some theoretical, hypothetical questions. Would you like to see less traffic? Of course we'd like to see less traffic.
All right. Well, look, we'll ask the officers about the survey in a bit. I can assure you it's carried out to statutory standards because you have to, and it was carried out by a professional firm. And they have to meet their professional standards as well.
But was they briefed to use the results in this?
So we will ask officers, and you will be here in the room maybe in half an hour when we ask the officers the questions that you've raised. Is there any other questions you'd like me to ask the officers before you end your delegation?
Where are the air quality data from the? Apparently, we've got the biggest concentration of air quality sensors in Wandsworth Bridge Road in Europe, but for the last 3 years we've been denied access to the figures. Now, why is that? And where are they? The next thing is the number of contraventions. They refused to give us, and presumably you, the number of contraventions and how much you've made from this scheme. I mean, it was 10 million a year. And
Can I just say, because I read people putting stuff on there like this is all to go and add to the council's coffers. There are no coffers. You know, our budget was 163 million in 2010. It's now 124 million, I think. In the budget meeting we agreed this year, there's a council going bankrupt every week. Any money that is raised from this goes back into that community to do community improvements. The biggest challenge we face in large parts of the borough is flooding. So lots of people are flooded out of their homes. And you can't get Thames Water to do anything for love of the money. They can't sell their homes. They can't get new home insurance. When these schemes come in, they provide funding from people who are cutting through, not people visiting a business or visiting a friend or family. They're cutting through. That money is recycled into sub schemes and stuff like that. So there's a lot of myth making and nonsense put on next door about the council doing this to make money. It's not a profit making body. It's a cash strapped local authority who invest in the community. So I would stress that has been a lot of the myth making that's gone on, which has been more than a little disappointing.
But I think there is truth in some of that, though, because you're saying stopping people cutting through. I mean, they're cutting through Wandsworth Bridge Road. They're cutting through the roads where there are more people living, working, and so on and so on. Another thing is that's in the survey. It defines out of borough traffic as those who are not stopping or anything like that and going straight through. It didn't say anything about the people who the majority of the fines, I would imagine, comes from, the people in Wandsworth, Chelsea, Battersea, all the places around which aren't in this borough that do want to come here and don't plug their number into a device or whatever, just come to shop. So that's not...
Look, I can assure you, for a long time, one of the first things I ever did when I got elected was introduce the Grove Home Zone, where we made the area 20 miles an hour and we put traffic bumps in. The reason was to stop cut-through traffic. This has been a feature of city life around the world, is to try and stop traffic. Paris recently banned cars from going into the centre. You know, there's all sorts of certain types of cars from going into the centre. So this is something that goes on in Tokyo, Seoul, London, Paris. How it's done, and it's all done for the same reasons. How it's done is open to public discourse on what works, what doesn't work. You're here to say you don't think it's working for you. We're here to listen and to try and take those things on board. And that's why we've given such a lot of time to the delegation. This is something, we have very clear objectives to improve the quality of life in Wandsworth Bridge Road. And I can assure you of that. If you're saying we've got something wrong, or there's information you want, we'll put that to the officers. That's the end of your delegation. We've got another of us to get through. So all I can do is thank you for your testimony and say, we will answer your questions. We'll ask your questions in a bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, right, now we're going to move to David Morris. Hello, Mr. Morris. I'm going to press the button in a second. I've just noted the last few speakers have been 4 minutes and 20 seconds, something like that. So I'm not encouraging you to go any lower. I'm just, if that's I'll
do my
challenge. All right, you ready?
Thank you, Cabinet, for allowing this deputation from Perrymead Street. We welcome and strongly support the report's recommendation to make the scheme permanent and its reasoning for it. Our street's letter of support for the scheme is in your report. 124 residents signed it, 1 opposed the scheme, 1 was undecided. For decades, we have been plagued with rat running through traffic. The plague became a nightmare with the arrival of SatNav and the Uber cab explosion. Our street is narrow and cars cannot pass. Queues, standoffs, road rage, obscenity and violence with the street full of stationary traffic. Of course, we were not alone. This nightmare stretched from Hurlingham Road in the west through many other streets to Harwood Terrace in the east. And it wasn't just residents who suffered. Many hundreds of children and young people every day come from all over the borough and neighbouring boroughs to their schools in the area. There are 4 in the Peterborough Road area alone, with over 1,700 pupils. Leon Wilson is the principal of Hurlingham Academy. Before the trial started, he came to a meeting of scheme opponents and made a passionate plea for it to be implemented as soon as possible before some of his students were injured by traffic streaming up and down Peterborough Road. Thank you, Hammersmith and Fulham Council, a Labour council, for engaging with us in this hitherto predominantly conservative area and coming up with a comprehensive and innovative scheme. Innovative because unlike the many LTNs which we've had in Fulham for many years, there are no physical barriers. The trial has transformed our street. It's become safer, quieter and healthier, not just in Perrymead Street, not just in the rat run streets. The transformation covers the whole area and everyone living in it, working in it, going to school in it, and visiting it. We in Perrymead Street care about all South Fulham. We care about its schools. Our children go to them. We're delighted that traffic in the school streets is down since the start of the trial by 45%. Air quality is improved. We care about its shops and businesses. We use them. We need them. If they don't thrive, the whole area is poorer and less attractive. It's said that the scheme is killing the shops and businesses on Wandsworth Bridge Road. The spend data in the report suggests otherwise. We have identified 13 shops which have opened since the trial began on Wandsworth Bridge Road. We care about the perimeter roads, Wandsworth Bridge Road and New Kings Road. We have to use them. We're pleased to see that since the start of the trial, from June 22 pre to June 23 on trial, the traffic volume on these 2 roads was down by 3.6%. In the trial area, there are now 7,000 fewer cars passing through every day. The constant refrain that all the traffic in the area has just been displaced onto the perimeter roads is just not true. Some has, but some has disappeared. People have either decided to go on public transport or that the journey is just not necessary. We care about the safety of Uber passengers. We are concerned by reports that some Uber drivers are still declining to take passengers to their doors. We are glad to see that the council has been in long-running discussions with Uber to allow pickups and drop-offs to trigger automatic permits rather than relying on the passenger. We hope Hilary Cannon's forceful and expletive-powered post will encourage Uber to see that it is suffering reputational damage by not coming to an agreement with the council on this issue. We wish those negotiations a successful conclusion. The trial scheme started life with cross-party support from our 2 previous Conservative councillors, Mark Loveday and Matt Thorley. That support, sadly, has been withdrawn. Our MP and all Conservative councillors have called for the scheme to be scrapped. They've adopted a partisan approach whereby any problem or concern is seized upon as a reason to stop it rather than to insist in solving it. They tell me that that's what the majority of residents want, and it will be to their political advantage to support them. Now the independent polling and online consultation at the end of this trial shows that the majority of residents in the trial area and the borough as a whole are in favour of these schemes. So I invite them to reconsider. Please accept the democratic mandate this scheme now has. Please return to a bipartisan approach to ensuring the scheme's continuing success and improvement, and surely there are improvements to be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You brought your friends with you. Can I just ask anybody else in the cabinet, do they have any questions? Can I just ask a couple? You said that look at that, still below 5 minutes. Sorry. Oh, yeah, don't worry. It's 5 minutes too. Just finished in 5 minutes too. You say that there's democratic support for this, and I appreciate the Sands End by-election was run on that issue. And is that what you're referring to? Or you're referring to the survey?
No, I'm referring to the survey.
Right. You heard from the previous speaker that they're saying there isn't democratic support, that the survey wasn't right. Why are you saying that you believe it to be true?
Well, because a large number of streets were canvassed and a large number of petitions were signed in favor of the survey. It's said that there is virtually no one on Wandsworth Bridge Road who supports the survey, virtually no businesses who support the survey. My hairdresser on Wandsworth Bridge Road is a supporter of the survey, and he tells me that his turnover in July 23, the month before the bridge closed, and August 23, the month after the bridge closed, was its highest ever for those comparative months. So I think you're being fed some misleading information about the level of support for the survey. The 12,000 signatures on the TCCG petition was calling not for the survey, was not against the survey. It was calling for consultation to take place. We've had consultation both before the trial began, and since the trial has began, we've had substantial consultation, and this consultation is continuing tonight.
On that, how many public meetings have you attended then as since, because I think I met some residents about 2.5 years ago when you first mooted this, and I was very clear we wouldn't do anything unless there was widespread public support. What, how many meetings have you been to where you've been working on this that you're aware of?
Well, before the survey started, Matt Thorley chaired an open meeting, which is open to everyone. There were subsequent meetings, one or two or three. Ben Coleman chaired one of them. Anyone was able to attend. Vociferous voices were raised against the idea and in favor of the idea. So I think there's been substantial consultation.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Well, can I thank you for your testimony, sir? And I will call the next person. Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we have Edward Giuseppe. Is that right? Giuseppe. Sorry, I'm being told I mispronounced your name. I must apologize. Giuseppe, Mr. Giuseppe.
Dear members of the cabinet, yes.
Okay.
Dear members of the cabinet and visitors, we commend the council's commitment to tackling air pollution in the borough. As part of the Clean Air Neighbourhood, the council is committed to the redesign of the main road that runs through the Wandsworth Bridge Road. The council have committed to, and I quote, a radical vision, a clean and green place that puts people first. That will make the air cleaner and the streets safer, especially if you're walking or cycling. That's from your council website. This vision has been developed over the past 3 years with residents and businesses and the collaboration with the Wandsworth Bridge Road Association. Over the course of the past 3 years, the association has engaged with the local community via multiple means: workshops, public community events, surveys, pop-ups, newsletters, flyers, WhatsApp forums, resident associations, and the Wandsworth Bridge Road Spring Fair of 22. The vision of the road evolved from these engagements over the course of 2021 to 2022. In June of 22, in light of this extensive consultation and as part of the Clean Air Neighbourhoods, the council appointed WSP consultants with the remit to develop detailed plans to transform the Wandsworth Bridge Road in accordance with the vision of a clean, green destination high street. During the past 2 years and throughout the experimental traffic order for the Clean Air Neighbourhood, the council has consistently confirmed that the redesign of the WBR, improving pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, and the greening of the area is an integral part of the Clean Air Neighbourhood. This has been stated by the council at the numerous public consultations that have taken place. For example, it was an explicit objective of the TCPR, as it was originally called, given in a presentation to the public at an open online council meeting on the 26th of January 22, at which many of those present here today attended. Detailed plans and the agreed vision were publicly presented by council officers last year at the Wandsworth Bridge Road Spring Fair event in May 2023, which was attended by some 15,000 visitors. Officers and design consultants engaged with dozens of local attendees at a prominent display at the event. Similarly, at the business meeting held on the 7th of September of 23, the council reiterated in their presentation that enhancing the Wandsworth Bridge Road as a place to live, work, and visit was part of the joint success factors for the CAN. The proposals were also presented by council officers at a further public event on the 23rd of September on the Wandsworth Bridge Road. The detailed plans are on the council's website and on the WBRA's website as well, and they are regularly highlighted in our newsletter that reaches hundreds of local residents. Finally, these plans have been publicly visible on the boardings opposite Barton House on the Wandsworth Bridge Road since October 23 and include a timeline indicating works beginning summer of 24. To summarize, the redesign of the Wandsworth Bridge Road has been a commitment from the council, and following extensive and ongoing consultations with the public, an ambitious set of proposals have been developed. We urge the council to now begin that transformation in earnest, including the raised crossings, widened pavements, SUDs, etc. And in addition, we ask the council to continue to work with TfL and Wandsworth to complete the redesigned pedestrian and cycle-friendly junctions at both ends of the Wandsworth Bridge Road, as these junctions do not currently meet safety regulations for pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, you know the format. Any questions from the cabinet? No. In which case, can I just ask? What have you noticed in terms of the difference in the area? We had a lot of talk about people saying there's more pollution and stuff. There's more, more congestion. Is that something that you've seen?
Well, I lived on a street that was regularly part of the rat running on the east side of the scheme. So for obviously, yes, I've seen a huge improvement of less traffic and better air quality, for sure.
All right. Well, I think we are to a degree going over old ground. So if you pardon me, I won't ask any more questions. Evan, is there anything else you'd like to say in summing up?
No, I just want to make sure that our development of our wonderful street continues in the right direction for the benefit of the entire neighborhood and the overall borough.
Yeah, no, look, I can assure you. I mean, there's a long-standing problem with that part of Fulham with traffic commuting from the A3. It's if you're coming down the A3, you have a series of cut-throughs to get to if you're heading into the West End or into the city. And the first real bridge you might want to come across is Putney Bridge. The second bridge is Wandsworth, and they take a lot of the traffic, and a lot of that traffic then floods out either north to Ealing and to Brent, or often to the West End and etc. So we are aware of the sheer amount of ongoing traffic, which affects that part of the area more than most parts of the borough. And our vision is to try and create something else and to tackle the failing high street and all sorts of different things. But as we've heard tonight, there's a variety of different opinions on that.
Sure.
B, there are a variety of challenges making sure we deliver that vision. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for giving your time up. Right. Next, we have Jonathan Massey.
I promise you, this is going to be the shortest statement of the evening.
Sometimes less is more,
well,
as they say.
hopefully.
But I will start so we can time it, and maybe we can hand out an award at the end.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
All right. Right. Off you go.
Okay, so I'm Jonathan Massey, and I live on the west side of Wandsworth Bridge Road. And this is a statement on behalf of myself and the other people who signed the deputation statement. So I'm here on behalf of myself and the residents who signed the deputation form to ask the council, you and the council, to support and make permanent the clean air neighbourhood, which has been trialled to the west of Wandsworth Bridge Road. The trial has improved the quality of life of all local residents, making the area less polluted and congested, making the streets safer and easy to navigate, in particular for pedestrians and cyclists. In addition, there are 4 schools located within the area, and also South Park and the Sands End Community Centre. All of these have benefited from the CAN. We don't want to go back to the unacceptable traffic congestion, pollution, road rage, and danger to local pedestrians and cyclists, which was a daily occurrence before the scheme was introduced. In addition, we asked the council to approve the publication of an experimental traffic order to implement further restrictions in Clancarty Road and Setchington Road. And that's it. Have I won the prize?
I'm just saying, it struck me off as yours now to nip out and buy something. This is 1 minute 26, say 27 seconds. So there you go. Easily have. And thank you for referring to the Sands End Doctor Community Centre. I had that put in, so it's part of our vision.
It's fabulous. Everyone loves it.
Yeah. Well, I won't tell you the story how I got the money, but it's from developers, as it were, and we used the land which had been used to was going to be built into luxury flats, but we felt Sands End deserved an arts and community centre, and it is a great success. And it captures the idea that we have a vision for the area to make it a so much better and stronger community, I suppose. So thank you for making reference to it. Can I just say, you've heard from some neighbours who are against it and are worried about, particularly, I was concerned to hear Alison Roger talk about her business. I mean, you live in the area, you shop in local businesses. I mean, what's
all the time?
What's your take, and do you have advice on things we could do to improve this going forward?
Well, I think that, clearly there is a problem with the traffic on Wandsworth Bridge Road, and I applaud your efforts and the efforts of the council to do something about it. But, we to redirect traffic, which frankly has to go out one end and in the other by clogging residential streets that weren't built for it, doesn't make any sense to me. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I use, and my family and my friends, we use businesses on Wandsworth Bridge Road, and we use businesses on the New Kings Road all the time. My teenage son works at Brook House, as behind the cocktail bar there. We use a lot of it's worth visiting, by the way. We use a lot of the restaurants there, and some places have opened recently. There's a very good Mexican restaurant on the New Kings Road called 1990 that's just opened. And if you go in there, it's packed. So, I'm afraid I don't believe that all businesses are failing. I accept the fact that some are, but to say that all businesses are failing doesn't make sense to me. And there are other very good businesses on Wandsworth Bridge Road that people use all the time. There's a new fruit and vegetable shop, there's an excellent baker, and so on and so forth, So I don't think it's all. And the problem is, and I'm probably over speaking here, so you can tell me to shut up. But the problem is, if you spend your whole time saying how awful things are, how bad things are, how terrible things are, people who don't know the area are going to listen to some of this. And I think it's really damaging to the area.
You know, I'm the first one to admit that I look at Nextdoor. I wish I didn't, and other social media, but it can be really toxic. And, you know, I just think that we've all got to pull together and make things better for South Fulham. And that's it, really.
Well, on that sentiment, it's exactly right, sir. We are here to make things better for South Fulham. You know, in a democratic society, people will have different opinions, and that's to be respected. Some people will have those sincerely. Some people will have those mistakenly. Some people will be bad actors, and it's all mixed up. And it's our job to sift and to work out who we believe. I've always believed it's the best thing to listen to experts and to try and get the experts to give us the best possible advice. Although I've also always believed it's best to interrogate those experts and to make sure that you can trust it. Yeah. But you're right. Everyone should unite to make South Fulham a much better area. That's the objective. That's where the investment's going. And thank you for saying it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next then is our last delegate, I'm sorry to say, which is Lou Abigail Savage.
I've got the graveyard slot, obviously, here at the very end. So
It's
ready to stand up, clap your hands.
Yeah, I
move
think I
around,
would say the best act in vaudeville. It's, you know, you'd get the best spot, I think.
I don't know.
All right, so I'll start now.
Perfect, thank you. So I've lived in Fulham for more than 35 years, and I was actually born in Hammersmith and Fulham. So my family lived in North London, that's where I was brought up. In the years I've lived in Fulham, I've actually lived on the Wandsworth Bridge Road and the New Kings Road. And for the last 12 years, I've lived on Limber Road. I'm here this evening on behalf of the residents of Limber Road, as well as the other roads around the scheme, to represent the overwhelming support for the Clean Air Neighbourhood Scheme. The initiative has profoundly improved our quality of lives in so many ways, and we would firstly like to thank the council for the work they have done. And I haven't really been involved with any of this work. I'm very new to being a supporter of the scheme. And secondly, everybody who I've spoken to has said, please, 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 can we make it permanent? Since the introduction of the scheme, the side roads are no longer racetracks for reckless drivers or routes for articulated lorries tearing branches from the beautiful trees. The scheme has fostered a renewed sense of community where everyone can walk and cycle in safety and feel safe to spend time chatting to their neighbours on the pavements without fear of being run down. Last summer, the residents of Limber Road, we got together and we wanted to show our support for the scheme because we'd seen this amazing change to our road that we lived in. And I and several other residents went door to door, which was one of the first letters of support for the scheme. Everyone we spoke to was hugely in favour of the scheme. In just 5 days in August, when many people were away on holiday, we reached 90% of the 54 houses on Limber Road. And everyone we spoke to wanted to keep the scheme in place and keenly signed the letter of support. The feedback on the doorsteps was phenomenally positive towards the scheme. Limber Road, as most of you know, is a narrow residential street built in Victorian times. And today, like many of the other roads, it has cars parked on both sides and is ill-equipped to handle the high levels of two-way traffic that have been dramatically alleviated now by the scheme. We have a very mixed community on Limber Road. Some people have lived on Limber Road for over half a century. My direct neighbours on either side of me, one moved in there in 1950, they're no longer there, and they were taken from their home, and the other one moved in 1970, and he was also taken from his home. And those two houses have been developed and sold on, and we've got much more younger families moving into the area with very small children and got scooters. And so the area is changing, but we still have a lot of older residents as well on our road. Before the scheme was introduced, our street was like many others we've heard about this evening, and had sadly evolved into a rat run 24/7. We had to endure daily drivers squabbling for right of way. We had verbal abuse, foul language, and violent altercations, blaring horns, all the whilst the cars' engines were idling. These scenes weren't restricted to daytime hours. We could be woken at night with horns or drivers shouting, and were unable to have the windows at the front of our house open. I mean, we've got double glazing in our house and we couldn't have the windows open, and we're not the only house. The benefits of this clean air scheme are not just confined to a decrease in noise pollution and general calmer feeling. For all ages, including young children with respiratory asthma and conditions, the reduction in the noxious exhaust fumes have led to improvements in the health and safety of residents. And residents on our road have come out and said they feel better. The scheme has been nothing short of transformational for our neighbourhood, and its continuation will only further enhance the health and safety, camaraderie of our cherished community. In light of these compelling reasons, we urge you to please make the scheme permanent tonight. Thank you very much.
And a solid 4 minutes, 25 seconds.
All right, okay. I did.
So thank you very much. So, I mean, you heard a lot of different things tonight about, you know, the area and more pollution, more traffic, more congestion. Your testimony is the opposite of that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's 80 people on Limber Road signed a letter to say that they want the scheme to remain.
So is that because you're in Limber Road and other people are in Wandsworth Bridge Road, or what's your take on that?
No, it's not because I'm in Limber Road. I mean, we've seen the data that's showing, yes, the side roads is less traffic, but also it's showing that the main roads it's not all going out onto the main roads. That's not what it's saying. That's not what the data's showing, is it? Unless I'm wrong. You're the
Well, I'm not. I promise you, I'm no expert. He's the expert, so we'll ask him questions in a minute. Okay, you have people visit your house, presumably.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
How? I mean, we heard of difficulties of getting people to visit and then getting fined.
Yeah.
How can you talk? What is it? Have you had that experience? And if so, what have you done?
I tell you, yeah, the experience we've had, and this is just on Limber Road, is that to start with, people were struggling, right? We've got really positive community WhatsApp group on our road, and people that were struggling, everybody helped each other. So it was really since COVID, we've had this nice little group. Most people now don't seem to have a problem with it. Yes, it is a bit onerous, but then you get a bit of hassle for a bit of gain. So that's it. Today, one of the people on the road, and I think this is really important, put in our group chat, they said, oh, can somebody help me? I've got a contractor working at my house. I haven't got my residence parking thing sorted yet. So put it in the chat. I'm on the phone to the council. 10 minutes later, somebody came through on the chat and said, yeah, give me the number. I'll sort it for you. On the chat, 5 minutes later, the person said, I've been on the phone to the council and they've sorted it for me.
Okay, well, that's
good
to hear.
This was
I was dreading the end of that story
tonight. Chat. I could show everybody the chat, and it was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. So it's music to your ears, I'm sure.
It is, but I mean, I know because I don't live in a cleaner neighbourhood. I'd like to, but I don't. And but we do have to book in plumbers and electricians and people like that, and that is all done on the Ringo app. And you're saying that that's pretty straightforward. You'd have to do it anyway for someone parking to get a discounted parking fee, and
you do it anyway for discounted parking. I think that everybody is getting used to it. Yes, nobody really wants change. I must say that was one of the things that I and my husband were really nervous about. You know, we're of a certain age where we were like, well, do we want to have to be using this Ringo app all the time? And there are lots of older people on the street, but people on our road are really helping each other to use it. And that's a real sense of camaraderie and community that we have. And I'm sure, I don't know what the other roads are like, but on Limber, that's how we all are.
It sounds lovely.
Yeah.
So, but you'd have to do that. You'd have to go Ringo out to get a discounted parking rate anyway. The friend, family, or person, electrician came to visit you or something. So that you're saying that's no extra hassle, but it's a bit of a learning change.
It is a learning change. It is, and I think it's okay. You don't have to do it on Sunday, for example, that people would say. So you get free parking on Sunday, or if someone came to you in the early evening so you'd have to register them at that time of day. I always register anybody that's coming, because I just register, and even if they came in an Uber, I will register them because I just feel that that's just being friendly to my friends that are coming round.
Okay, is there anything, given you are the last person, is there anything you would like to add as your final bit of testimony?
This is a really good scheme. My sister lives in an LTM in North London where it's all cordoned off. And when I told her about this, she was like, oh, that sounds much better. So I would say you can go and get more money by selling this to other councils. There we are.
Be an idea. We are cash strapped, as you heard me say earlier. So
there you
get on to our chief executive and say that. Okay. Well, we've obviously got a bit of way to go. But thank you for your testimony.
Pleasure.
Thank you for giving up your evening to come here. Thank you. Okay, well, we've heard both sides. I'm going to ask John Goldsworthy now. And I'm told he's a genius officer, but it's a bit like saying just before someone starts a comedy set, this person's really funny. So I'm hoping he will give us answers that reflect his reputation. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Mr. So I'm going to go through some of that also, before I do that, is there anyone in the cabinet who would like to ask Mr. Goldsworthy some questions? Was it? Okay, let me just start then. You heard the testimonies from people pro and against. Can I start particularly around Alison Rogers' point about business? Because I mean, you heard me yap on about business a lot and how the importance of supporting small business. Why is it a situation that we're still in a place where she's arguing she's losing customers because people don't like the hassle of this 87-year-old man who does, well, I think that's more to do with Ulez than anything else, but it still is nervous of driving in of his car. I mean, would you be willing to work with Ms. Roger and what would be your take on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think it's the whole communication piece or the comms piece on selling South Fulham as a destination place to come, and it's not closed for businesses. It's quite a key piece. It's things that we have spoken about in the residents and business meetings, and really the only way forward. Because technically, the way the scheme's designed is the people that are coming to visit are exempt, so they're perfectly able to get there.
So no one visiting a business should have to pay, and they would have, unless they would have to pay parking charges because we're not exempting that.
Yes. Yeah.
But they should not have to pay any money, even if they cut down a side street. It's only if they don't fill it, if they don't put something into the app, either on a phone.
Yeah, but even
why is it there's so much misunderstanding then? And I appreciate there's been some bad actors out there who spread some misunderstanding about it, but most people, if you heard tonight, everyone's been very sincere in their concerns. Why is there so much understanding we haven't managed to get on top of, given that this has been 2 or 3 years of consultation and you've been working on this, almost continuously?
I think in the early days, because a lot of the key businesses were on the side streets and they could be accessed without coming through the cameras, it wasn't necessarily necessary to be in there. But the scheme got modified as it went on to include those, because it was a reasonable request from the businesses to enable it to come in. So I think there was some initial comms that would have been, you have to do one activity, and then that's changed over the life of the experiment to try and accommodate those businesses. So that bit's fundamentally changed. I think the other bit is there's a fear that you can't come into the area without registering first, and it's a bit like the Dartford crossing. You've actually got till midnight to do it, so you don't have to do it in advance. And
the easiest thing to do is do it once you get to the shop.
Yeah,
can you just put the registration number in?
Yeah, the Ringo tablet one, it's a little easier than that, but just to sort of like highlight, we're actually working with trying to get a new supplier on. You actually signed the cabinet report off for the new contractor, which will be starting at the end of the month, and the resident permit system will be delivered by that supplier, and the new version of doing this will be in that one, which will be if people have gone to gyms or hotels and gone the tablet, put the reg plate in, it will be that type of system. So that's what working on to try and.
So it should be no different to going into a building and having to register when you go into the building, which is what you do. Okay.
Yes.
And that would be, and you could do that for every single business in the area.
Yeah, that's
What
the
about
offer we can
com
give.
support? Because what we heard from Alison Rogers, these are small businesses. They're struggling. They've got all sorts of things to go, not least a cost of living crisis. And there are some businesses that are doing well as some markets. You know, the building industry is, I think, 29% inflation and is booming. But other businesses like food retailers are struggling. What, you know, can we support them with marketing some of that stuff?
Yeah, so I think it would have been quite a few months ago. We had the New Deal for Businesses that was done in one of the leaflets, and part of that was a comms officer support through Nicky Burgess's team in the economy for the bid. So that's all been supported and financed to do that.
But there are funds to support a
Yes.
business like Alison Rogers on sort of contacting the customers and saying it's going to be easy, there's no charge, and actually it would be less congestion because you can. We can do that, can we?
Yes.
Okay. So will you work with the local businesses then to develop something that really does go, you know, above and beyond in terms of, that's what I'm interested in hearing, if this is to go ahead.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just then on terms of a take on traffic, we've heard there's more congestion, more air pollution and more traffic everywhere. And you've seen all sorts of stuff like that on Next Door. You know, I appreciate we live in these times where a lot of stuff appears on the internet that shocks some people isn't true. What is, as a professional highways officer, what is the truth on what's happened to traffic? Do you want to talk us through that, please?
Yeah, I suppose I've always been clear in the meetings with residents, etc., that the roads themselves have a finite capacity of traffic they can take, and pretty much for London, for the main routes, that's been full for ages. It's just like the issue you were talking about with flooding. It's the same. It's once the road gets full, it floods into the side streets. What's happened in more recent years is technology in terms of sat navs is proactively looking for that spare capacity in the road network and filling it. And it's been an old age problem in traffic management, the theory that if you build more roads, you know, you can solve the capacity problem, make traffic flow, and actually the reverse happens. It just generates more trips. And that's been true from the M25 and lots of studies in New York, and they've actually found reducing capacity increases flow. And that's generally what's happened in this scenario. And the reason that happens.
I mean, I do remember Ben Elton doing a comedy set on that back in the 1980s. But you know, those of us like me who aren't highways experts, you're saying that you're going to reduce the total traffic. I don't understand why that would be the case if you're closing people's access routes to Perrymead Road and all the other roads we talked about.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily the volumes as the congestion flow. So what happens is every time traffic has to turn off or turn onto a main road, that slows down the flow. So traffic that would go into the side streets has to get back onto the main roads further down the track, and that causes a backlog on the main roads, which then encourages more people, and you get this vicious cycle until all the roads are flooded and parks, and that's what happens. As you start to take it out of the side roads and move it towards the main road, and you take all those interactions out, it starts to flow better. So we have seen with the congestion data, so we get hold of third-party data from INRIX, and which is they basically supply all the tracking data for Google that you see, and the sat-nav companies that work out when to reroute traffic. So that has the historical patterns of all of the congestion and the average speed times it takes to get up roads. So we've got traffic counters that count volumes, but you also have to understand how long it takes to get over a leg segment. So since the scheme's been in, that has changed. But you also have to put into context the backdrop that London traffic has changed in all of that period as well. And the pandemic per se has really, really affected that. So before you would have had peak traffic times at sort of like the classic congestion time, around the school time, and then the classic home time. Pretty much now from 5 a.m. to around about 2 a.m., most of the main road network is up flat out. It's crazy in London in that regard. So the spare capacity.
Why?
It's because you've got things like people working from home, so they're now in their locale doing local trips. You've also got people trying to change the time that they turn up to work, so they might travel at 10 o'clock rather than the 8:30, trying to avoid traffic. So it's infilling where you would have had, you know, high congestion and peaks and troughs. It just filled the lot in, really, is what's happened. And that phenomenon has gone across London. And in fact, post-pandemic, the average traffic on the roads went up to about 135%. So it was quite large. And conversely, rail and bus actually dropped down between the 50s and 70s, comparatively in terms of patronage.
Okay. All right. Anything else on traffic? Just on air quality, I know this is not, but on air quality, we've sat with Professor Frank Kelly, who's the head of faculty at Imperial, and his team. We've met people at Charing Cross Hospital and Imperial College NHS Trust and heard their team on this. But there are people going around saying air quality is good and it's getting better. Okay. And they're telling people that stuff. We've heard Frank, we've seen Frank's discussed that.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the discussion about with Frank as well is really what's at the heart of the scheme. It's reducing pollution emission at source. So we can monitor the effects and where it goes, but it's very difficult to understand what the impact of the air quality is having on people because we don't track where people go or the exposure rates, etc. So all we can really focus on is how much pollution is being released and where, and that's really what the scheme does. So before the schemes went in both east and west, you would have had queuing up Wandsworth Bridge Road, queuing along Townmead, queuing up Imperial, queuing up Peterborough, and so on and so forth. And all those queues on the inner roads have gone, and you've still got the one on Wandsworth Bridge Road. But what happens is because you've got less pollution being generated in the side areas, the one on the main road can disperse and into that area, and the overall concentration across the piece goes down. And that's why I think Caroline mentioned it earlier, is that the reason why the kind of charts for Wandsworth Bridge Road and the side roads are the same is because that's what the phenomena is. And so that's the phenomenon you get, is the dispersal. Because you've got less pollution being generated over here, it can accept it being spread from the main roads. It's a bit like dropping ink in a bucket and then stirring it. It dilutes.
I mean, I've heard and I appreciate we're very lucky to have Imperial College London, Imperial College NHS Trust working so closely with us on this, because not every council has that access to such internationally respected experts. But people out here haven't heard that. If you're trying to explain it in layman's terms, because there's an awful lot of people quoting, all the website data looks like it's fine. A lot of people go around quoting that sort of nonsense. Why is the website data saying it's fine when the experts are saying that actually it's really toxic, really dangerous, and needs immediate action?
Yeah,
what's the dichotomy?
Yeah, so there's almost the what's safe limits for humans versus what's the legal limit that you're allowed to emit. So most of the websites are geared to the latter. So the government's got its legal limit, and we've got a legal obligation to try and get our air quality under that legal limit, and that's what we get challenged with. But actually, from the air quality world and a lot of the air quality forums that I have to attend, they're all striving to actually get pollution as low as possible, because the legal limit is still harmful. That's the general rule of thumb.
And okay, well, I think there's a lot more work to be done to get that out there, because I think people generally want, my experience, most people are fundamentally decent and will act on good advice. But actually, we need to be better at getting out what the air quality is, what the risk is to people. Because I think we shouldn't be in a situation where we're debating that. It's like debating whether cigarettes cause cancer or not. 20 years ago, no one's doing that now. 50 years ago. I think we do need to be better at getting out the data on quality and what the difference is, because, as I said, there's all sorts of people saying different things, and there are legitimate misunderstandings being created. So we can do that. Okay, Uber. I know Councillor Coleman has been in negotiations with Uber and you. Have you got any? Where are we with that? I don't know if Ben, would you want to come in on that point?
Happily, if you
Yeah.
Yes. Can I just say first? I think it's important as a man to say that men care about women's safety as well. And I think if men don't care about women's safety, then they're not behaving in a normal human way. And so we have been very concerned about, as a council, we're very concerned about violence against women and girls. We've had a strategy to combat that, which was led by Rebecca since 2022. We have more CCTV cameras as a density than anywhere else in the country. And we've been trying to get Uber engaged permanently 3 years. And I have to say, hats off to those people who've raised this issue in such a dramatic way, as you said, Steve, because we finally got Uber to listen to us. And it took, it's disgraceful that it took a woman making a video saying the problems that we've been talking about for this to happen. But we now have an agreement signed with Uber on the technical solution we've been trying to put to them for years. And the drivers will in future be able to go into South Fulham and from South Fulham, pick fares up from outside and go in, pick fares up from there and go out without being fined. And they won't have to separately register or anything like that.
I was going to say, I'd just like to add to the technical solution has been operating since Friday, so we've actually had it up. We know it works.
Yeah, it's been operating since Friday. We're now making, and Uber's doing a little bit of a test run of it, and they're going to be rolling it out to their drivers imminently. And we're not just talking to Uber, we're talking to all the most important ride-hailing apps, and we've been doing that consistently. And obviously, the biggest needs to jump first, but we expect the others to go as well. So that's a problem which has concerned us, and is now resolved.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work on this, and thank you to the residents who have proved the power of proper campaigning. So thank you for everyone who took part in that. Okay. Well, I suppose if we do that, then you would be able to sort of roll it out to other councils, as it is an interesting thing. All right. There's a whole bunch of questions that came up from the residents. Would you like to touch on some of the other factors that were made? Wandsworth Bridge Road, we've talked about the pollution there and the congestion. Is the congestion up or down in Wandsworth Bridge Road?
The congestion it's mildly less. It depends on the time of day. This is as I said, I go back to the change in traffic patterns makes it slightly harder. So it's better at the early periods of the day and slightly worse in the middle of the day because the traffic volumes have kind of changed around. Similarly, I think
what's the trajectory? Will it get better?
There's still, I think, more interventions need to come up. I know it was mentioned earlier in terms of the vision for Wandsworth Bridge Road and the junctions. They will have a massive impact on how much traffic can flow down that leg. So they're quite vital, and it's one of the reasons why TfL has been quite reluctant to put pedestrian facilities in the past. Now that the bridge has changed, and there is an experiment going on at the bridge that's changing the traffic patterns and prioritising buses. They are amenable to that, but they are still waiting for the outcomes of that trial before they'll move on to the next piece. So
I mean, this is a problem. We have to go to TfL on some of these things, and TfL can be quite slow in responding to some of this stuff, as we've seen with that junction on the business park. But you're saying that we have other measures that you have in line. So you're saying it's roughly the same, marginally better, but you have other measures you want to take to improve Wandsworth Bridge Road.
Yeah.
And how quickly can you bring those forward?
Again, everything's got to go through due process and consultation and design with people. So it's going to be a journey, unfortunately, for this one. And some of the stuff we'd like to do faster with TfL, of course, is going to take time to go through their democratic process as well. So we're hoping to start some of the interim measures in the summer. We've done some in the past already, so making the cycleways more obvious to reduce some of the junction accidents that happened to cyclists. But there's other requests like crossing points along the road, etc. So all of those will be going in whilst we're still waiting for TfL to catch up with us to get the real work, which is the two big junctions at either end, which have got inadequate pedestrian facilities, and that's something that was picked up tonight by residents.
Right. Okay. I'll lift my microphone. Okay. Just on that sort of Wandsworth Bridge Road, businesses disappearing, some businesses coming. What are the numbers, please?
As far as I'm aware, I think we've had there. I think there's 8 gone, 13 come, or something like that. I'd have to go and check for definite. It's usually the economy team deals with the business piece, and of course that's a change in flux. I think someone did pick up on the MasterCard piece as well. Just on that bit, I would say that that's the industry standard for the investment markets to use that data. It's not just MasterCard data, it's all transactions that go through even MasterCard banks or handheld terminals. It's bigger than that. And all of the adjustments for changes in suppliers in the market is all taken into account. They do what's called an indexation factor. It's not.
So, I mean, we can look at that, and I appreciate there's an industry standard, but there's some validity in what was in the evidence that was given there.
They dial that out as part of their thing. And the same for inflation. They dial inflation out. So they're quite clear in their data from the website.
But in terms of the numbers of business, you say 8 have closed, 13 have opened. Is that verified?
As far as I'm aware, that was the last count. I haven't checked it as of yesterday, but that was the last count I saw.
We had a series of questions about the validity of the survey. What's the requirement to carry out a statutory survey of this nature, and where does it compare? Someone told me it was the biggest, most comprehensive survey the council's ever done, and I appreciate it when officers tell me stuff like that. But I would like to know if that's true and what makes it true.
Yeah, so experimental traffic orders under Section 9 of the Road Traffic Regulation Act, if you want the geekiness of it. Essentially, how it works is you would place an order and you have 6 months for people to raise valid traffic objections into an inbox, and we listen to them and then we consider them in the report at the end when we make a decision, and that's pretty much all we've got to do. That was amended slightly by the Secretary of State to say it would be nice if you did an opinion poll of some description, or just ask people on views slightly wider than the statutory piece, which we've gone a little bit more than that. So we used the opinion. We actually said to them, we need you to go and consult on the views of the area. They told us they would sort out the questions because it's down to them. It was also quite important that it's not a referendum, so they couldn't ask that direct question because the referendum is explicitly not allowed in the process. You're after actually the views, and you're trying to
say that again. What's not allowed?
A referenda. So you wouldn't have a referendum style vote saying yes or no to the scheme. That's not allowed in the traffic.
So when you say why not, I don't understand.
That's what.
Can I just remind people? We're hearing delegations. No one should interrupt. We're trying to get to the bottom of stuff here. This is a democratic process. Yeah. Please, no heckling. Mr. Goldsworthy, please continue.
I think there's a question for the Secretary of State, really, that one, why it is or not, but that's the advice and guidance that comes from government is that's the piece. I think ultimately, we did have a letter from Grant Shapps at the time when that advice note changed, and it's because traffic schemes generally are quite divisive, and then to have the referendum, you'll end up with the Brexit 49-50 split on 99.9% of the schemes. So what they really wanted to get to the heart of is what the outcomes people were after, so that you could take that into the views, which is what the opinion survey has basically done.
But what you're saying is the opinion survey is additional to a wider survey that's gone on. In that case, how many public meetings have you had in the area?
We probably had was eight or nine even before the experiment started, and it's been ongoing ever since. So there was working party meetings before the trial started, and then there's been residents meetings and business meetings, engagements with online meetings and meetings in person. I would say easily sort of 15, I would have thought from memory, that we've actually been to, big meetings where we've been to and done that sort of thing over that time period.
I know Councillor Coleman had 20 meetings at one point, and 25 meetings on one side of the street, and then a similar amount on the other side of the street. How many have you had when you were down there where you've met people?
I'd love to think it was as many as that. It felt like 120, I'd say, but I'm not sure the exact numbers. I do know that it was a point I was going to raise there, because the petition was discussed a minute ago, the Sheffrey's petition. And that petition was all about, it wasn't all about, do you like the scheme or do you not like the scheme? It was all about, we need to have more consultation. And overall, my impression has been that the consultation has been coming out of our ears, not just in whether people like the idea of the scheme or not, but actually down to where you should place the cameras in individual streets, which is never, I mean, I'm no expert on traffic, though I feel more than I did before I became a councillor, is quite rare.
Yes, it is quite rare. So even the camera placements, there was, from a professional opinion, 3 or 4 cameras that we would recommend. I think from residents highlighted some local issues, and we put extra monitoring cameras, and their local issues bore out to be true. So when you looked at where those camera placements were, the residents' local knowledge was really, really useful and instrumental in that design.
So all of that counts as part of the consultation process, and I agree, that is definitely beyond anything I've seen.
I should also say that what I found quite refreshing about the consultation is, at the time, with Conservative councillors were supporting the idea, and one of the Conservative councillors who no longer a councillor also chaired meetings, and so it was nicely cross-party and inclusive in that way. It's not carried on being that way, unfortunately, but at that time it was.
All right, just, we have people here who spoke against, who live in the area. So don't you feel disappointed that you weren't able to convince them, given all this, and weren't able to work with them, come up with solutions? What's gone wrong?
Yes, I think you raised the democratic process. I think it comes back down to the understanding and explaining of the nuances of the scheme, and it's quite complicated, or that we were there to try and get rid of some of the friction people had with the app, etc. And we set up a call center to try and help with those issues. But it's I think there's only so much push comms we could have done to certain people, and I think some of the, you mentioned sort of some of the bad actor comms in when doesn't help as well, because that the myths, and we spent a lot of time trying to myth bust, which is very tricky, and it's unfortunate. But and then the people, when we're going through their things and cancelling the tickets for them, we're going, oh, we didn't realise that this works really well. So we've got lots of sort of like scenarios where that happened, where people thought there was no point sort of like contesting the ticket, because it was like, it was a camera on being done, and then you speak to them and say, oh no, that's fine, you were there visiting, no, that's cancelled, we'll sort that out. So in most cases we're about 85% of the tickets that were issued cancelled. So we've gone through and done that.
Okay, I think there was a couple of other things, isn't there? Let me just go through. This is yeah. Okay. All right. I think we're almost there. Is there any other questions from the cabinet?
Yeah. Can
Yes.
I just to follow up on that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leader. Just to follow up on that. So you were talking about some of the feedback that was coming through from residents during the consultation process and the discussions, etc. Can you maybe give a couple of examples of times where that feedback has then adapted the approach or fed into perhaps the communications that have come through? I think you gave one or two examples, but it'd be helpful to hear how that feedback has been used.
Yeah, so most of it's been for the businesses. So the introduction, that big change in the permit scheme to include them in the process. We also had it with some of the key businesses that have got car parks, so we could use cameras to automatically pick those cars up that were visiting and stopping in the car parks, and that got introduced through the thing. I mean, even today, Mark was at Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's have now said yes to a tablet, so that's gone in today for those people that come around and going to. Even though all of the ones where people don't need to pass a camera to go there, but it's there now. The Harbour Club had a tablet quite long ago. They're quite big users, aren't they? So that one was probably the biggest one in terms of take up. The other one's been the call center. So it was quite evident that the technology was a problem for people. So we had the call center set up where we was taking calls for that and doing advocacy to just make sure that everyone was sorted. And I think, as Lou pointed out, even the community has been getting together and helping with that as well, which has been very good.
So just to clarify on your point regarding the tablets, so you're saying there are tablets within the local community for people to access.
So that they go in the shop. So if you're a shopper of a shop, you can go in there and
Can any business get a tablet for free?
Yes.
So it's free for any business who asks for one.
Yes.
And you just give it to them, and that's it.
Yeah, we're giving some set up with an account, and they're off to go. Good to go.
Right. Did you want to carry on?
No, thank you.
What I'm going to do is ask the opposition if they've got any questions. I know the Leader of the Opposition told me she had some questions early on. So over to you, Councillor Brocklebank-Fowler.
Thank you, Councillor Card. I'm very interested in hearing this detail about the phraseology of the consultation, because a lot of people have complained to me that they started off answering, but sort of said the wrong answer, and so therefore didn't get to the right question at the end, if you see what I mean. And I didn't realise that you couldn't ask a direct question, and you're saying this is specific to a traffic order, is it?
Yeah, it's to do with the traffic process. The whole traffic regulation order process is we only have to consider valid objections on traffic grounds for the nature of what the traffic's doing. So that's the key part of it. The Secretary of State brought in for the temporary traffic orders, which is what this was done under, or the experimental orders process, to include asking people their opinions of the outcomes of the schemes, but not to have a referendum. So the direct question, yes or no vote type of process was not permitted, and that's the Secretary of State thing. So,
okay, thank you. So that leads me obviously to the fact that it would have been up to the council initially to actually find out what people wanted in the beginning. My feeling is that this kind of evolving state of having to solve problems, that have come up left, right, and centre, and so on. And obviously, there are a huge number that aren't solved because we have a room with people who have completely different views. So my question actually to you, Councillor Cowan, is why didn't you consult all residents before the traffic order was put in place?
Yeah, I would very simply say that's a misunderstanding of the scenario. This scheme started, well, the initial scheme started on the east of Wandsworth Bridge Road, and that involved significant consultation. And out of that, because many people, it really did. I know people said politically it didn't, but it really did. It
really did, and then they said no, and then it went ahead.
I'm sorry. Look, can we stick to the rules? You remember rules. I think you voted to put them in place. So you ask me questions, I answer, and then you can ask another question if I decide to let you, which I will. Okay, but let's try and stick to the process. Yeah, but look, so this scheme started as an innovation. There's no doubt that people across the world of all political persuasions in cities are trying to reduce the amount of congestion, the amount of traffic, the amount of air pollution. And that's why you read about what's happening in Paris, Tokyo, Seoul, New York, pretty much everywhere. And it's a universal challenge, which fits into a variety of different agendas. The scheme started off the back of the eastern side of Wandsworth Bridge Road. And it started as a series of meetings with residents. Some of the residents, some of them might even be here, were furious when they first turned up because Harwood Terrace had closed. They ended up working with the council, thanks to Ben Coleman and many other residents, to develop this scheme in the eastern side of the road. So it was developed with residents. Indeed, it became extremely successful and was widely supported and went in. And indeed, you fought an election on it in Sands End and lost hugely. So there has been not just proper tests, there's been also an electoral test on it as well. There were bad actors saying things. I don't want to point my fingers at anybody, but I would say follow the finger up. If I wave a hand around, you might guess who I'm talking about. Okay, I'll tell you, Greg Hands. So, there were people who put around stuff that was, designed to inflame and designed to try and divide. I accuse Greg of that. But actually, Matt Forley, a Conservative councillor, was not one of them. He focused on the evidence and worked quite closely with Ben Coleman. Because the residents on the western side saw what had happened on the eastern side, they asked for it too. And you're right, it was a work in motion. The councils are putting low traffic neighbourhoods everywhere. We didn't do a low traffic neighbourhood, which simply involves closing roads. We tried to do something that was smarter and more responsive. And so we couldn't have done that without working with all the residents on both sides of a road. But it came about as a request after people had saw what had happened on the east. And indeed, I met them, I think it must be about 3 years ago, in the Sands End Arts and Community Centre. And a number of residents petitioned me, or argued that I should just put it in immediately. And I said to them very clearly, it's not how we do things. We set up working groups. Those working groups consult, we adapt, they consult, we adapt. That's why you have a working group. That's what's meant to happen. And that's why this has taken 3 years to do the western side. It came about as a request from residents, not from us. I was skeptical of it, given the hassle we'd had in putting it in and the amount of bad actors putting around bad information. But actually, the residents pushed us to go through it, and they've evolved things. And as you heard tonight, we now have Uber, thanks in part to the residents' campaign, who've agreed to adapt as well. So it is something different. It is something new. But all of those changes have come about with the side-to-side consultation with residents. That's how we do things. So that consultation, I think, was more thorough than anything I've seen. And you've got to remember, I was leader of the opposition facing you for 8 years, and I saw your consultation. So with the greatest respect, I've never seen anything like that happen before we became the administration. We were very keen to make sure we brought people with us. Tonight, I think we've sort of tried to capture that ethos. I've generally been interested to try and hear problems. We're still keen to resolve any problems that are remaining, because we think if we get this right, for something that will really improve quality of life. We desperately want to spend money on making the borough totally flood resistant. We can't do it unless residents take the same approach that quite a lot of residents have taken here, and saying we want to work with you to make to make it come about. So I would say you've seen the most extensive consultation. I think that is my experience of it. The officers told me that, because officers, you'll remember, like to give you things that you can feel good about in your administration. But I'm quite skeptical when officers do that. But looking at it, this is a 3-year solid consultation, finished with an opinion poll, based on statutory guidance from the Department of Transport. Everything fits that legal basis. That's why we're very keen to make sure something is watertight. But there's a lot more than making sure the stuff is legally watertight. You've got to go further, and you've got to make sure that you take the public with you. And that's what we've tried to do. And that's what I think we're doing, seen by the success of these things. If there's any other changes that need to be made, I promise you we'll make them. If you've got any more questions.
My concern from very early on, which I made in my budget response speech, which was laughed at actually by some of the female Labour councillors, which I thought was very strange, was about female safety, all ages. I happen to know some elderly people who actually are now more fearful about going out, not because of being attacked, but in case they fall over and there's nobody passing by to help them. This is something that is not possible for you to solve. But a deserted street is one that women on the whole do tend to avoid walking. That's why you use the main roads. And I think that is something that is impossible to design into a scheme. And so it's a risk that you have to accept.
Look, all I would say, look, firstly, I am, as a man, unable to share your lived experience. So I'm certainly not going to say I understand anything other than in the abstract. So I recognize that what you're saying is totally valid. What I can say is my colleague, the Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion and Community Safety, it's her key priority. We have a lead member in the council, in Councillor Emma Apthorpe, who is specifically the lead member for women and girls. And they are trying to take vanguard measures. Now, I appreciate your deputy leader has long argued we should be cutting back on the law enforcement team. I've sat in meetings where he's done it. But let me tell you, having 72 law enforcement people on the streets in uniform, with cameras, with training, with powers, is one part of our whole strategy to make things safer for women and girls. Having the densest CCTV network in Britain. So not only, because 72 people can patrol a street in the borough, but actually what we've got, as I'm sure you've seen, is the CCTV control centre, which is a bank of TVs. If we see anyone who's fallen over and we've spanned the whole streets, within minutes we can have a law enforcement team down there, or indeed the police, if that's needed, or any other emergency services. So I would say the idea of just relying on passing traffic possibly stopping is, I can appreciate that might be a benefit, but I think we've gone a lot further and always will to keep women and girls safe. And I can give you that assurance, but I know you will. I think you're on one of the policy and accountability committees. I know you'll want to take that up. And if you want to look at that in more detail, I would certainly welcome my colleague, Councillor Harvey, and indeed Councillor Apthorpe, going through that with you and hearing any ideas you have to make it safer for women and girls.
Look, we'll leave it there. I think people have been here a long time.
All right. On that bombshell, then, can I ask if anybody else has any any questions or comments? Councillor Coleman, you were very involved in the early stages.
Yeah.
And I know I'm deeply grateful for your tough, hard-nosed negotiations with Uber, but also for work. Is there anything you'd like to say at this point?
Yeah, little did I think when I became a councillor that I'd have a GCSE in traffic management. But for me, it's been an extraordinary experience working with so many residents who have wanted to make this work, but have been among the most challenging I've ever dealt with in my career. Some of the people who are now the strongest advocates of this scheme were its most violent opponents to begin with. And I have a lot of respect for those people who listened to the arguments, engaged in the conversations. One of the things about the terrible tragedy of COVID, one of the positive things was that actually people came in their hundreds sometimes online and saw detailed technical descriptions of why traffic worked in certain ways and didn't work in other ways. And many people were prepared to listen and to change their mind. And I've learned a lot about how consultation works and how discussion with people works as a result of that. I think where we are now is we have a scheme that is always getting better, which is to say that it's possibly, I think, the best scheme that exists in the country, but it's not to say that it's the best scheme that could ever exist anywhere in the world. And I think it's very clear that in my view, and obviously I accept not everyone accepts this, that most people in the area, the vast majority of the people in the area, like it. That isn't to say the vast majority of the people in the area think it cannot be even better. So Councillor Khan, what I'd say is we need to work together as a community, coming together to make the scheme as good as it can be. And for that to happen, we're going to have people engaged in that conversation who don't say in one forum, I just want to make it better, and then go to another forum and say it should be scrapped. Because they are, you refer to bad actors, they're not actually trying to make it better, they're trying to achieve something quite different. But going forward, we've heard from people and heard from businesses tonight and others, if we can work together, if anybody wants to come and work together, if the scheme is, the Cabinet takes the decision to make it permanent, work together to make it even better. And we heard little things tonight about how Ringo is going to be possibly replaced by something better, how we're talking to Sainsbury's. We're always looking ways of improving it. Anybody who wants to come and work with us in genuine, authentic partnership, not as a precursor to some political thing of undermining the scheme, but actually wants to make it better, I'd be delighted to do so, because this has been one of the most fulfilling experiences I've had as a councillor, and I hope we can have a better, happier, healthier, more united, more successful South Fulham as a result of this. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor Holder, you're the Cabinet member responsible for this initiative. Would you like to say some words?
I am. I'm going to end with the more practical side of things. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that's come tonight, because it takes a lot for people to express themselves publicly, and you doing what you've done has been amazing in my view, and it says a lot about the Fulham, South Fulham residents in itself. But anyhow, one person who hasn't had an opportunity to speak is Mark Fanahan, and although I don't want you to speak, Mark Mark has been doing a fantastic job behind the scenes. He actually literally goes round to businesses and organisations in the South Fulham area. And if there are things that we can help you with, he needs to know, I need to know. And if you would let us know if you think that there are any new ideas or problems that you would like to resolve, please get in contact with us, because we are approachable and we'd like to help in any way that we can. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from any members of the Cabinet? Councillor Kwan.
I just wanted to say thank you to the officers and Councillor Coleman for your work with Uber. I think we all have to remember that Uber is a technology company. It's not a cab company, and the solutions will come from the technology that's evolving. As someone who's been taking public transport, a woman who's been taking public transport, black cabs, mini cabs her whole life, I had the most terrifying experience of my life when I was locked in an Uber, the back of an Uber, with a driver who wouldn't let me out for 3 or 4 minutes because I wasn't answering his questions. It later turned out that he was using a phone which wasn't registered to his account. Now, Uber, years later, Uber have now actually solved that with technology, so their drivers have to scan their face and so on. So unfortunately, violence against women and girls is not going to be solved just by taking Ubers. I totally accept that this is an issue that we had to drive forward. So can I just say that if something like this happens again and a company like Uber is dragging its heels, that we raised the flag earlier and we put the pressure on, because they clearly had the ability and the technology to solve this. And it's only because, as I said, of a resident public campaign that something has been done about it.
All right. Well, that's it. That didn't know that happened to you, so I'm concerned to hear that, and thank you for sharing it. Okay. Well, look, I think we've heard an awful lot of different views. Democracy is very challenged at the moment, as you've seen around the world, and I don't mean just Putin invading Ukraine. I mean populist people like Trump disseminating nonsense and lies. And then there becomes a battle of which facts do you want to believe, false facts. And ultimately, each generation has to defend the nature of our democracy. And at the heart of that is operating on proper information. So the fact that everybody has come here tonight to offer a delegation and to try and cut through the guff and to give us their honest and genuine testimony. So to everyone who gave a delegation, I'm genuinely very grateful. What I can promise you is we will take on board everything you've said and we will strive to make things much better. And I think we've explained our vision a number of times. That is our vision, to make this borough the best place for anyone to live in any city, anywhere. And a thriving business sector, a thriving residents community, cleaner. These are all key things. Anyone that tells you that the air is cleaner or getting better is talking nonsense and doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, I appreciate they may have got the information off some dodgy website or even some legitimate website that doesn't do the right thing. But we have an awful lot of expert people talking to us, and we are going to go through a process of sharing what that is. But there is no doubt that London's air is not clean. There is no doubt that there's too much traffic on the streets. And so therefore, I'm going to recommend that we accept the nature of a report with the caveats of working to try and take on board many of the concerns that have been raised by the residents tonight. This is a work in motion. It's not a low traffic neighborhood. That does just simply involve closing roads. This is something we've been trying to adapt and perfect all the way through. So if you're prepared to work with us and to try and make those improvements, I promise you we'll take you seriously and we will bend over backwards to make this an exemplary scheme. I think it is important we act on it. There's been more consultation than anything I've ever seen in my career, my 25-year career as a local representative in this borough. And so I'm very grateful to everyone who's been part of that. So I'm going to ask the Cabinet, is this report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And thank you again to everybody who sincerely came to give us their evidence tonight and took part in this process. Thank you very much. Right, we now have a series. Sorry, if you could leave quietly, please, because we still have a proper meeting to go through, a cabinet meeting, and other reports to discuss. So, thank you very much. That is item. Mr. Tosh, can I just? This is not what's expected. It's not what's expected. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we had to finish on that very low tone. Okay. We have now just completed we've now just completed item number 7. Item number 8 is parking strategy. We have one delegation coming to talk about that item, which is Natalie Lindsay. Natalie, would you take the table, please?
Good evening.
Right.
I'm not sure anybody has the bandwidth to listen to me ramble on about parking, so I'm not going to do it. I'm actually just going to do very, very brief summary to say please read my deposition. It cannot possibly make sense today that it is 6 times more expensive to park 4 bicycles in a storage lobby than it is to park a massive SUV on our streets. This is we've been recommending at the Pollution Commission that this was tackled a long time ago, and I hope that the council will be considering that. What I actually wanted to just quickly summarize was just a reminder to everybody here, but sadly, the people I wanted to remind it to have all walked out of the room, exactly why we talk about parking charges for vehicles, facilitating bike storage, why we talk about cans, why we talk about building cycle lanes and reducing speeds on main roads. We have a crisis. In fact, we have multiple crises. We have a health crisis. Britain has the highest incidence of obesity in Western Europe. Our inactive, static lifestyle is leading to heart disease, diabetes, and falling life expectancy. We have a mental crisis. The main cause for missing work in our young is actually mental health, isolation, and loneliness. We've talked about an air pollution crisis at great depth. Yes, 9,000 premature deaths in London. We all know that statistic, but air pollution contributes to dementia, to asthma, to stroke, to lung disease, and in fact, even impacts the uterus and the unborn child. We have a road safety crisis. 35 people a week are killed on our roads. That's not just 35 men, women, and children whose lives have been cut short. That's 35 families and communities who have had their loved ones ripped away, and that pain and scarring is there for decades to come. And then, of course, we have a climate crisis, and this was not raised nearly enough during the course of the last debate. Last month was the wettest and the warmest February on record in the United Kingdom. In 2022, 70,000 people died as a result of the heat waves in Europe. Climate crisis isn't a problem for the future. It's not a problem for some other part of the planet. And it's certainly not a problem that we can leave for our children to sort out. It is here, it is today, and everybody in this room and in this country has a duty to address it. And that means that we cannot continue with business as usual, because business as usual is not sustainable. Over the past 50 years, we've baked into our society a method of transport that is killing us, both directly and indirectly. And then Orwellian-like, we've all said, it's freedom. But the good news is that the change that we need to implement, whether it's the parking, tackles all of these crises at the same time. It really is a win-win. Active travel, walking, cycling is good for our health, both physical and mental, reducing isolation and connecting communities. Taking cars out of our cities not only reduces air pollution, but it makes our streets safer, allows children to walk and cycle to school, play on their streets, families to enjoy the streets, and neighbours to reconnect. It improves footfall in our high streets, allowing businesses to thrive. People shop, not cars. We have an enormous advantage in this borough. We are right in the middle of a city. We have 18 tube stations, 4 railway stations, and dozens of bus routes. There is nowhere in our borough that is not connected to public transport. There is no case to be made for dependence on cars, and indeed the majority of the residents in this borough don't own a car or have access to a car. We know that each and every technique discussed tonight, cans, cycle infrastructure, parking fees, we know they work. They've been tried and tested in hundreds of cities in dozens of countries, evaluated and peer-reviewed in countless academic papers around the world. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We do not need to test the water with timidity. That work is done. It's now time for an extensive implementation. Everyone in this room has a duty to change, but doing nothing is not an option, because doing nothing in our societal model is killing us. So councillors, we all have a duty of care, and you have a duty of care to your residents, every resident of every age and every background. Time is running out, and every day of inaction is an opportunity missed to improve the life chances and well-being of our population. We know the changes that need to be made, and we know how to make them. So now we urge you to action, not timidity, not one small step at a time, but holistically, thoroughly, and comprehensively. Please keep going. You are on the right side of history.
Okay, great. Well, look, I've been in Friends of the Earth since I was 16, so I am, so's Councillor Coleman. I think you'll find we are very much on side with greening the agenda. I would say 2 things is, and this is not a pun, but we rely on our residents to make the weather. this is a contested political space. When some people do need their cars. Many people need their cars. Elderly people, disabled people, and there's many. We're not anti-car. What we're anti-climate change. We're anti-pollution. We're anti-congestion. We're anti-traffic accidents. And getting that balance right in the way we encourage how people transport is why we pioneered. We were one of the councils that pushed for electric scooters. We pushed for electric bikes. We pushed for bike clubs. We have done all of that as part of finding a very robust active travel process. John will tell you that we're actively keen to see more and better cycle lanes and to see a more rigorous public realm improvement that makes places better for people to live and stay in their neighbourhood and work if they're working from home, or indeed just being at home. So these are all things we care about, but it is important that in a contested public space with often bad actors making powerful arguments and shouting loudest, that we get really sophisticated and are able to bring people with us. The art of politics is leadership, and leadership is making people go with you in the direction that you want to go. If you find you're running over the top of a hill by yourself, you're not leading anyone anywhere. So our pushback to you is we are on side with wanting to green the environment. It's something that goes to the heart of what we're about as an administration, but we also are respectful that we have to do things with residents and bring them with us. And even when we think we've done that, we might sometimes get people tell us we haven't. Some of those people will be sincere. Some of those, like the MP for Chelsea and Fulham, might not be. So we rely on you to be a very strong and powerful and persuasive voice of the community. I hope that tells you we're on the same side on this issue, and I thank you for giving up your time and for your testimony.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I just remind everybody that we have a spring fair on the 12th of May, and it is a fantastic opportunity to show the road in a different light. So I hope you will be there. Thank you.
See you there. Thank you. Right, where we are now, is that item number 8, parking strategy, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Right. I move on to item number 9, approval procedure, borough-wide responsive repairs contract and terminate existing term services contract for lot 1 and lot 2. Item number 9, Francis Ume, over to you.
Thank you very much, Leader. So we need to make sure that we provide homes for residents that are decent, safe and warm. And so in essence, this report is seeking approval to terminate the current contract that we have with Morgan Sindall on lots 1 and 2. So that's north of the borough and the central part of the borough. And to procure a new contract for 3 years to deliver effective repairs and maintenance to the homes that we have for those same lots. And that contract would start from September this year.
Are there any questions on this? Yes.
Question. May I make a comment? I am delighted to hear that we are losing this contractor. I have to, for once, commend the administration for taking finally decisive action, because that contractor has brought so much heartbreak to so many of our residents. So you do have the support of the opposition to say thank you for getting rid of them.
All I would say, thank you for your support. You don't know the half of it. But yes, no, getting rid of contractors is not as easy as it sounds, not least because there's a contract. But thank you very much for the support on that. And I will take, on that note, I will call for a question of do people have any further questions to raise on this? Is this report agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. That then takes us to item number 10, forward plan of key decisions. Are those noted? Noted. And then it's item 11, which doesn't exist because we changed the rules. So I would ask you to note that and bring us to the end of the meeting. Thank you to everybody who's taken part. This is democracy in the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. Thank you for being a participant.